HS2 is so important to the Midlands because we need to get our goods and services, our people to be where they need to be in the fastest possible time. We live in a fast-moving world with different economies moving at different paces. We can't afford to be left behind. If we get left behind, we'll continue to be a low-wage economy, and that's not fair. It's really important for the people who live here, and it's more important still for the generation to come.
I'm Gemma and this is my husband Paul, and we're both foster carers. I think initially we were a little bit anxious ourselves about going to panel. It sounded quite scary, but it wasn't at all. It was just a really friendly chit chat with a group of people around a table. It was more of a celebration really of us being there and of us, wanting to become foster carers. The County Council offer a fair rate of pay, so we get paid dependent on our level of experience. So after you've done it for a while, then your level of pay will go up based on your experience and level of training that you've done. We've also got a network hub, which is a foster carer support group, and it's just an informal get-together. We feel so valued as a foster carer for Nottinghamshire County Council. Everyone's so caring and wants what's best for you as a family. The matching process is really careful, so they listen to our needs and, they would never think of placing a child that wouldn't fit in our environment. As a foster family, we try and just make it everyday, normal life, try and bring some stability and love to that child that's staying with us and give them experiences that perhaps they've not experienced before. We love going out on day trips together, and for example today we've come pony trekking. Nottinghamshire's a great place to foster because we've got so much on our doorstep, there's so much that we can do. I feel really lucky that we're able to foster here.
Right, thank you, colleagues. Now going on to move on to item 10, which are motions. There are 3. They are in your blue book. The meeting is scheduled and will end at 5:30. I would hope that with just 3 more motions to go, that we will be able to finish a little earlier than that. Can I remind you that as far as speakers are concerned, the mover and seconder gets 10 minutes, and then obviously a wind-up for other people wishing to make comments. The maximum time is 5 minutes, and you will be timed. So, Councillor Hollis, are you in with us?
I am, Mr. Chairman. I'm ready to go if that's okay with you.
Thank you. So, motion 1 then, if you'd move the motion, please.
I will move the motion, Mr. Chairman, and just begin by reading it out. Nottinghamshire County Council notes that paper clarifying and strengthening trustees' investment duties published by the Department for Work and Pensions. The paper recommended giving pension fund trustees more confidence to divest from environmentally damaging fossil fuels and put their cash in green alternatives. Until now, many pension trustees have been hamstrung by fiduciary duties that they feel requires them to seek the best returns irrespective of the threat of climate change. This council further notes that according to recent estimates, Nottinghamshire County Council's pension fund's total fossil fuel investment totals £327,312,727 exactly, or 7% of the total fund. This council calls for Nottinghamshire County Council's pension fund to investigate divestment from direct ownership of equities and corporate bonds, as well as any commingled funds of companies engaged in fossil fuel extraction and others that do not align with the council's moral objectives. This council notes that once money has been divested from fossil fuels, it can be reinvested into more environmentally suitable and socially beneficial assets such as renewable energy, energy efficient and socially beneficial housing to address fuel poverty, low carbon transport systems, and investment in transition to carbon neutral local economy. And just speaking to that, Mr. Chairman, as briefly as possible in the sentiment of time, the main thrust of this motion about Nottinghamshire County Pension Fund is that they are not suitable and not compatible with a safe level of climate change. It's on that point that this is not a party political motion. Only a week ago, Conservative-run Shropshire County Council made a historic decision to divest their pension fund from fossil fuels. This council, as members will be aware, is overwhelmingly run by the Conservatives. This was a brave decision. Simply putting it, will we do the same? As this motion clearly states, according to recent estimates, our council's pension fund total fossil fuel investment amounts to £327,312,727, which is 7% of the total fund. Nottinghamshire County Council are still backing the industry responsible for this climate crisis, pouring billions into the companies blocking action to tackle climate change. Keeping fossil fuels in the ground is a matter of survival for communities around the world. We need to start the fight for climate justice. This means they are bringing us closer to climate catastrophe. For this reason, the main tenet of this motion has been to ensure investments are compatible with no more than 1.5 degrees centigrade of global warming. Between September 2019 and March 2020, the pension fund sold around 1/3 of its directly held BP and Shell shares due to concerns around climate risk. The total value of the pension fund's fossil fuel holdings has fallen a lot, but this is more related to falls in the share price of companies. This is partly due to COVID-related falls in the whole stock market and partly oil industry specific falls due to collapsing demand than shares being sold. It's important that this council recognises that future global temperature rise, particularly beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius, will increase Nottinghamshire's pension fund climate-related risks. It will increase negative financial impact on the pension fund and its members and the organisations which it underwrites. The wider economic, social, environmental impacts of climate change will negatively impact on the lives of all Nottinghamshire citizens. This would both minimise the contribution of the pension fund's investments to climate change and, under the pension fund's fiduciary duty, minimise its investment exposure to climate-related financial risk. Consistent with this target, to boost investment in a low-carbon economic recovery from COVID-19, we urgently call for the pension fund to accelerate large-scale investment in low-carbon and sustainable equity funds. We call on the pension fund to increase investments within Nottinghamshire, aiding a sustainable recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and creating sustainable jobs. We also call on the pension fund to investigate whether divestment from fossil fuels will help deliver the target of investment being compatible with no greater than 1.5 degrees centigrade of global warming. With this reduced climate-related financial risk and free up money from low carbon and sustainable will free up money for low carbon and sustainable investments, including within Nottinghamshire. No one in this council can credibly argue that making sure investments are not contributing to runaway climate change and making sure they are not evaluated climate-related financial risks is a bad thing. Mr. Chairman, as this motion asks, we are calling for Nottinghamshire County Council's pension fund to investigate divestment from direct ownership of equities and corporate bonds, as well as coming-led funds and companies engaged in fossil fuel extraction and others that do not align with the council's moral objectives. I'd like to thank members of Extinction Rebellion Nottingham for their support in putting this common sense policy together. This is a responsible motion, Mr. Chairman. Many councils, including Shropshire recently, across the country have passed similar motions, and I would ask members of this council to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Madden, are you seconding the motion?
I am happy to second the motion, Chairman, and I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kerry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Chairman of the Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee, I strongly recommend that members do not support this motion. I'll explain why. It undermines the committee's delegated authority and to use its specialist informed judgment around investment decisions. Like many members of this council, I have children and grandchildren, and I believe all of us care about the future of our planet and the environmental legacy we leave to future generations. I do support investigating and investing in cleaner, greener industry, business and property, wherever it is beneficial to do so, and for our pension scheme members. We already do invest in such assets. My problem with this motion is that it implicitly seeks to apply a uniform one-size-fits-all principle to a complex, very complex, constantly developing area of policy. The reason why we have a dedicated pension fund committee is to receive and conduct detailed analysis of the relative advantages and disadvantages of each investment proposal and indeed divestment proposal. There should not and cannot be a uniform approach to these decisions. The Pension Fund Committee still has the fiduciary responsibility to ensure that the security and payment of the pensions of some 138,000 members, whilst minimising the cost to taxpayers who fund our employees. COVID has made that more difficult. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
You can, okay. Unlike this council meeting, the Pensions Fund Committee receives specific ongoing expert advice and information on pension fund matters from a wide variety of sources. We work with highly qualified professionals within the fund, the LGPS Central Pool, lobbying groups and our investment managers. Consequently, members of that committee are best trained and best placed to make these policy decisions and should retain the delegated independence to do so. It might make good copy in tomorrow's newspapers to have a big, simple headline along the lines that Nottinghamshire Pension Fund goes green. But the solemn duty of managing our pension fund is not compatible with blanket policy commitments placed on a council agenda to achieve short-term publicity. What should reach the newspapers is that the Ashford Independents have an allocated place on the committee and have not been represented. I've only been represented on 2 occasions between the 7th of March 2019 and until the last meeting on 20th of February, latterly by Councillor Hollis. The government paper referenced in Councillor Hollis's motion itself recognises the independent and nuanced nature of investment decisions. It states, and I quote, "It remains government policy not to direct the investment decisions or strategies of trustees of pension schemes." The paper also states these measures are not intended to give any support or campaign groups for boycotts of certain countries or divestment from certain assets. Trustees have primacy in investment decisions and their prime focus is to deliver a return to members. The issue of divestment requires objective, calm analysis. Unfortunately, we seem to live in an emotionally hysterical, headline-driven time where such things are often presented as a battle between people who only care about money versus people who only care about the environment. This is, of course, nonsense. Nottingham Pension Fund takes the financial risks associated with climate change very seriously. It should be noted that the financial risks of climate change are not consigned to the oil and gas sector alone. To understand these threats, the fund is currently working with its pooling company, LGPS Central, to produce a risk analysis which will help us gauge their exposure, understand the final implications and formulate a climate strategy. A report regarding this was taken to that pension fund committee that Councillor Hollis attended in February. Subsequently, committee members were also invited to attend a virtual Responsible Investment Summit hosted by LGPS Central earlier this month, which I found very helpful. All committee members are regularly invited to working groups to discuss investment matters, and this will continue, and I'm happy to organise a seminar should members wish. The motion before us would distract from and potentially undermine that work, and therefore I ask members to vote against and trust the Pension Fund Committee to do its job. My colleague will explain more about how we're addressing the issue of climate change within our work. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Pringle.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just add a little bit of history to the paper. The paper that the motion mentions was actually a paper that was brought up in June 2018. Is somebody barking at me?
I think someone's barking up the wrong tree, but carry on.
I'll continue, sorry. Thought Eric was trying to tell me something there. It's sensible. Yeah, the paper was a paper that came out in June 2018. And it did cover the divestment confidence for trustees, and it was amended then in September 2018. The response was from 89 individuals and organisations to the consultation, and it was just short of 3,500 scheme members that offered views. It should be noted, though, that the paper was not to direct investment or strategies of schemes. However, I'm really pleased that after a brash outburst previously at committee by Councillor Hollis, it's been open to discussion, and in realising the efforts of the pension committee, the motion highlights that this is not a time to soften efforts of divestment, but to strengthen investigation to investment for social, environmental and economic impacts for the future. Chairman, I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cotty. Councillor Cotty, please. Can you hear me? Hello?
It's not been eaten by dogs, as the chairman.
I've not asked to speak. If there's something in the air like a hand, it's done it itself. Seems to have a life of its own at the moment.
You're excused then. Thank you, John. Councillor Barnfather.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow on effectively, seamlessly, I would like to think, from where Councillor Kerry finished off. And I support Councillor Kerry's advice in respect of voting against this motion. As a committee, we recognise that climate change has the potential to seriously impact financial markets. It is clearly important that our pension fund understands the financial risks of its exposure to fossil fuels, potentially stranded reserves, and climate change itself, which can affect industry sectors such as transport, energy generation, high energy industries, farming and tourism. Nottinghamshire Pension Fund Committee will continue to implement its long-term strategic asset allocation. Contrary to the implication in the motion that we are not divesting, 6.2% of the fund is invested in environmentally sustainable assets, a significant proportion of which are in clean energy. This rises up to 8% when we include allocations committed to infrastructure investments, which are currently awaiting drawdown. These increased investments are being funded through a gradual reduction in equity investments. The pension fund regularly monitors its exposure to risks associated with oil and gas companies, as with all other major sectors. At the end of March, the holdings within the listed equity portfolios were calculated at 3% of the total fund, 3%. This figure has reduced and continues to do so, as our previously alluded to climate investment strategy is implemented. The response of policymakers to the risks arising from climate change can create opportunities. The fund actively seeks investments which can be expected to benefit as a result of the current and long-term impacts of climate change. Within the fund's equity allocation, a number of low carbon and sustainable funds are currently being considered. There is no doubt that over time, the fund's exposure to fossil fuels will reduce further as a result of these diversification decisions. The fund, with its investment managers and partners, continues to engage with companies to mitigate risk. This in turn improves the resilience of corporate strategies at global resource companies in the wake of climate change agreements. Our asset pool, LGPS Central, has set out a responsible investment and engagement framework and an annual stewardship plan which align with and support Nottinghamshire Pension Fund's approach. Climate change is one of LGPS Central's specific stewardship themes, and working with its stewardship partner, Hermes EOS, the fund engages very widely on climate change matters with companies, auditors, industry standard setters and policymakers. This engagement programme stretches far beyond fossil fuel producers, recognising that as long as fossil fuel demand remains strong, fossil fuel supply will continue. Therefore, the engagement programme covers both the supply side and the demand side. There has been positive progress, but we do recognise that more needs to be done to hold companies to account relative to their climate targets and commitments. Chairman, I hope that this brief technical summary gives colleagues an insight into the complexity of the work undertaken by the Pension Fund Committee with regard to fossil fuel divestment and climate change risk, and serves to illustrate why that committee is the appropriate forum for all such decisions to be made, that committee. This complexity is only increased by the new added financial pressures posed by the global COVID-19 pandemic. The fund is carefully stewarding assets for the benefit of pension fund members and employers in line with LGPS regulations. The fund is carefully considering actions required to mitigate the financial risks of climate change, whilst continuing to invest in environmentally sustainable and socially beneficial assets like renewable energy. The motion before us would distract from and potentially undermine that finely balanced work. Therefore, I would ask members to vote against this motion and trust the Pension Fund Committee to do its job. As you are now aware, a not dissimilar motion was taken to Shropshire Council last week. So it appears that this is a somewhat generic motion doing the rounds, and therein lies a concern. Managing a pension fund is not something that should be approached in a generic manner. Investment and divestment decisions need to be broken down. And
can I ask you to come to the end of your...
Coming to a conclusion now, Chairman, and examined individually on their merits. Whilst much more can and will be done, responsible investment engagement has produced positive results from a long-term climate change perspective. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Creamer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just unmuted myself. Yeah, thank Councillor Kerry and Councillor Barnfather for their actual very technical and very useful and informative input. However, nowhere in that resolution does it say we're actually being prescriptive. It is still leaving it for the pension fund to be dynamic and change as it needs to. And within all those technical details, the actual environment hasn't actually been mentioned once. The only one who's actually done it so far is Councillor Hollis. I mean, if people realise that only last week, I believe, the International Environment Committee, actually Siberia, suffered its longest heat wave, 38 degrees. It does get hot in summer for those who say it's always cold, but never to that degree and for 6 months. What the committee is doing is correct in looking at it. But when you actually turn around and say, in time it will be all right, well, that's the problem. We're running out of time. You've got there's people with grandkids, great grandkids even. And are we going to pass that on to them? I hope not. It's a problem we should be dealing with now. And the pension fund, it's asking us to look into it, continue diversifying. It's not being prescriptive. There's enough leeway in there. If we turn around and say we're going to actively move away from fossil fuels and replace it with other items, there is no problem with that. I would urge people to actually vote for this. All the content so far, the input so far, has been of a technical nature to do with the pension fund itself. We can alter those parameters within the pension fund to make sure we are dealing with a national, international and global problem, which is climate change. So we haven't got time. I'm sure that in time, Councillor Barnfather is correct. In 30, 40 years' time, we will have completely divested with the plan we've got at the moment. That is far too late. We might not be here in 30 years' time. So I would urge members to actually vote for this. There's enough leeway in it. It's an important issue. It's not Nottinghamshire, it's not England, it's worldwide. And we need to do our little bit. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Carr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was actually quite shocked to read that we have over £327 million invested in fossil fuel investments. Well, yeah, it did, because my understanding was, and when I asked 2 years ago, our holdings were negligible. Well, £327 million, million pounds is not negligible. All I've heard from some councillors is financial speak. As Councillor Creamer quite rightly said, I haven't heard one Conservative council mention the environment in all of this. And I would say to Councillor Kerry, yes, the Pensions Committee is delegated, but surely it's delegated to follow the policy of this council when it comes to things like this, and so it should be. I'm absolutely shocked that we feel that it is acceptable in the crisis, environmental crisis that the world is in, that we still think it sensible and wise to invest in fossil fuel companies. What else are you willing to accept? International arms sales, perhaps? Investing in Russia, but we won't dwell on that one. Firms that promote gambling. Also, it gives you a higher return. What we should be looking at is what's right for the world, what's right for our future generations, and what we're going to leave them, the mess that we're potentially going to leave them. And we talk about headlines in newspapers the following day. Potentially, the headline could be that Nottinghamshire Tories don't care about climate change, because that's what I'm hearing today. And I urge members to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fowle.
Thank you, Chairman. And yes, I'll certainly be supporting this. And of course, this motion's doing the rounds. That's because there's so much public concern. Everybody's concerned about it. You're coming across, I have to say, is very out of touch here. And I've had loads and loads of people kind of approach me, urging me to support this motion. And when all said and done, all that's being asked in this motion is to investigate the possibility of disinvestment. It's fairly benign. It's not asking you to do anything kind of hugely rash or kind of, completely out of order. And Councillor Kerry, it's not about just about newspaper headlines either. This is about the health of our planet and our future. So I'm going to leave you just with some words from an excellent email that I know has been doing the rounds for good reasons, because it's making some really good, making a really good case for voting in favour of this motion. Pensions are supposed to be about saving for the future, not destroying it for our children and grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rhodes, but before Councillor Rhodes speaks, I don't have any other speakers apart from going to Councillor Madden. Councillor Rhodes, please. Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, Councillor Rhodes. I do have Councillor Wise. Sorry, Muriel. I will come back to you. Sorry, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, this is an extremely interesting debate. It's a very good debate, actually. But I have to say that the Labour Group, if you've not already realised, will be supporting this motion. And the reason we're supporting it is quite simply this: that what it's asking for is for us to investigate divestment. Investigate divestment. And why can't we, as an authority, be big enough to look at the way we invest in our pension fund and investigate whether or not this is the best thing to do for our planet and for the environment and for, as other people have said, for future generations. We introduced under my leadership an ethical investment policy. Don't know whether that's still being followed. I'm assuming it must still be. And it's strange, isn't it? I mean, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we would have been taken to task if we weren't investing in fossil fuels. But, the world's changed. And we're all much more aware of the damage to our environment and to the planet in general that these fossil fuels do now.
I'm bringing Muriel, then I'll go back to him.
So I'm very much in support of this motion. I think it's a well presented motion. I think it's a moderate motion. There's nothing there that we can't, as an authority, sign up to and support. I recognise the issues that Councillors Kerry and Barnfather have highlighted. Yes, it is a very complex matter. I don't doubt that at all, and I know that the members of our Pensions Committee do an excellent job in ensuring that pension fund members get the best possible return for their investment. But all we're asking for here is for us to investigate divestment, and I'm sure that the council's big enough to do that. Just one final thing, picking up the point that Councillor Hollis made. This is not in any way party political. This is not having a go at the administration. It's not at all about party politics. This is simply about ensuring that we are making the right ethical investments in the pension fund, and it's asking the council to investigate that this is actually happening. So we will be supporting this motion, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Before I ask Councillor Vice to speak, Councillor Kerry, you're showing us a hand up.
Yes.
You know that you can't have a second bite, Jerry.
I know the rules. I believe I understand the rules, right. Chairman. I'm looking at a point of clarification from what's been said earlier by some of the members. The word climate change was used many times in the speeches from myself and Councillor Barnfather. That encompasses the environment and much more. And about the motion, can I just say that is an explanation you are taking into further explanation, and so that I'm not prepared to let it go unless you are very quickly going to come to the point. Okay, I am. And the second point is we're already investigating, which was again clearly mentioned in the statement, in the speeches. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Wise.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I very much want to support this motion because I've had numerous queries to me, as I'm sure many councillors have, in relation to this motion. not necessarily all from Extinction Rebellion or from people with particular expertise in the sort of detail that Mike and Chris have, but I think who want to see us in our ethical policy for investment, just want to see an encouraging sign that we are making positive strides to exploring alternative green energy. I mean, the government funding for governments generally funding for green energy has sometimes wavered and changed when people have wanted to move towards green energy themselves. I think they want to see us as a county council making a broad statement that we are exploring better options and working on this in a positive way. I think this motion is broad enough to encourage people to see that we are active in this direction, and that an ethical investment policy has some detail and thrust to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Henshaw, please.
Can you hear me, Chair? Thanks
I can.
very much. In relation to this motion, I hope all councillors will support the motion. If I have any criticism of the motion, I don't think it's strong enough. I mean, you've only got to look online at various pension funds up and down our country and throughout the world that are now radically disinvesting in companies that invest in carbon and all the things that actually are producing the greenhouse gases. I don't think, as Councillor Kerry has said, that it's particularly a complex issue. In my mind, the issue is quite simple. We as a society and as a world produce too much carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. And if we don't change that, the results will be catastrophic, not only for the people of Nottinghamshire, but for the people of the world. And I think the only complex issue we've got is trying to get the pension fund trustees to reinvest in cleaner and more sustainable companies. But as I say, it's a situation that's actually happening up and down and in and around the world at the moment. We haven't got a lot of time with this. We've faced a pandemic and we're still facing a pandemic that's affecting society in relation to the COVID. But this issue of climate change and how it's going to affect the world is the major issue that's going to affect not only us but our future generations, and we need to do something. It's not only a practical choice, I think it's a moral choice that we've all got to make. It's not a party political thing, it's an issue that affects us all, and we need to come together and try and find a solution, because if we don't, the results will be catastrophic. And as I've said, evidence already shows that companies that prioritise environmental and social governance issues perform and can perform better in relation to returns. So I would urge all members to support the motion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Chairman. I rise to speak. As a trustee of the Pensions Fund, we have a duty to get the best returns for our members, for members of the Pension Fund. I fully support Councillor Kerry's statement as Chairman of the Pension Fund. On another note, as an environmentalist, as a person throughout my life, I have personally tried to adhere to a frugal use of worldly resources, running around in a small vehicle and not using air travel, vacating only in the British mainland. I find it quite amusing that the motion proposer drove to the last county council meeting in a large Range Rover type vehicle. I don't have any issues with people for promoting a greener world, Why wouldn't I, being an environmentalist? But we should all try and practice what we preach and think of our own footprint. I'll carry on. I know this is transgressing for this subject, but it is great that we and others throughout the world have virtual meetings now, and I hope this continues after the pandemic is over. Things like this and working from home, etc., will bring our global footprint down. Working from home. Emissions will be...
Thank you, Councillor. Could you address yourself to the actual motion? I accept that you're getting it tenaciously trying to get it in, but can you go to the motion, please?
Well, as I say, generally speaking, it is up to us all. You know, running around in his vehicles, going around to South America, Cuba, Australia on holidays, using all our resources. It is up to us all. That's all I can say. And I support Eric Kerry with the motion, against the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Plant, please.
I'm pressing it, right?
That's
it.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. We can see and hear you.
Good, that's brilliant. Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Councillor Kerry and Councillor Barnfather for their technical information. And I actually do agree that that it is complicated, without a doubt. But I can't agree that supporting this motion would distract or undermine any ongoing work. I mean, I think that the motion is measured and it's reasonable. And the debate has been very measured and reasonable, and I welcome that. I'm going back to, it's been said and I repeated, the motion is calling for us to investigate divestment. You know, and I think that's a reasonable thing to be asking in the time that we're in. And without a doubt, it's not going to happen overnight. We know that. But there's clearly no ethical justification for continued investment in environmentally damaging fossil fuels. They are destroying the planet and nobody can deny that. And more, you're hearing about it all the time. There is strong financial and economic arguments for actually investing in greener energy solutions. I mean, you can see it all the time. It has actually been mentioned that obviously the big petroleum firms, because there is a lack of demand for oil, they're not delivering the returns they have done in the past. The direction of travel is clear. And I do think we have to seize the opportunity, excuse me, at least to investigate this issue and move forward with it. Yes, we have a responsibility. Nobody's actually mentioned that for our pensioners who've worked hard and deserve a pension, obviously, at the end of their working life. But we also have a real responsibility for future generations and leaving them a planet that is worth living on and living in. And so I urge all members actually to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson.
All right. Okay. Just bear with me, Chairman. Am I on?
I can't see you. I can hear you. Yes, you're in. I can see and hear you. No, you've gone quiet. Can you unplug? Unmute?
I'd already unmuted. I've unmuted.
Right. You're okay. Don't touch anything then.
No, I won't, I promise.
Okay.
I promise. Right. I too am concerned about the planet, like everybody, or like most people in this world today. And if we're not concerned about the planet, then I think there's something radically wrong with us as human beings. I happen to be a grandmother. I've got 4 grandchildren, and I would like to leave something quite safe for them to live in. And I too, like the previous speakers, I think the motion is a bit waffly to begin with. I have to say that. And I understand where Kerry and Barnfather are coming from and all the technicalities. And like Liz Plant said, it's not easy. But really,
what I would like us, for once, as a group of elected county councillors, I'd like the headlines to say, Nottinghamshire leads the way. That's what I'd like. And in leading the way, asking the pension fund to retain their independence. They have all the experts that come and do the presentations and tell them everything. I would like them to seriously listen to what we are saying, or a lot of us are saying. We would like an investigation by the actuaries, the 151 officer, all his team, everybody and anybody connected with the pension fund. And like Liz said, we have to look after our pensioners, yet we also have to look after this planet to leave something for our grandchildren. And if we don't, I think we're very foolish. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And the final one, Councillor Brooks, please.
Thank you. I fully support this motion, and I agree with the very positive comments that some of my colleagues have made. I don't understand why you would not support this motion. We are in a climate emergency. This is a crisis. And if we don't start to act and act quickly, this is going to end very badly. Time is running out. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll come back to my final speaker, which would be Councillor Madden. Do you wish to speak? Oh, sorry. Councillor Payne. I didn't know you'd sneaked in.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies, I just clicked the button as you'd brought in Councillor Brooks. Apologies, Chairman. I'll keep it very brief, Chairman, because I know you're wanting to draw the debate to a close with the final speaker. I think there are 4 reasons to support this very straightforward motion. Firstly, to do the right thing for a safe and healthy future for members and their families. That's members of the pension fund and their families and wider society. To reduce financial risk as the world moves away from fossil fuels. In 2016, the investment in renewables was $300 billion, double that of fossil fuel investments globally. Thirdly, to protect our reputation, we should live up, as Councillor Dobson said, to Nottinghamshire and the government's zero carbon ambition. And fourthly, to accelerate the transition, to invest in the clean energy of the future, not the fossil fuel dinosaurs of the past. And I really don't understand, I'll finish on this point, Mr. Chairman, why, if Councillor Garner's made such personal efforts over his life to make sure that he's helping tackle climate change, which he should be applauded for, why he's against investigating that matter, because that's all this motion is asking us to do. So I would recommend that members support the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Simberdis, please. Parry, sorry, can you hear us?
No. Can you hear me now?
We did, then you got cut off again.
Yeah.
Yes, we can see you, yes. We can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself?
Help is at hand.
Yeah.
Now you're mute.
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go for it. We can hear you.
Okay then. Thanks, Chair. Anyway, I want to congratulate you and your Vice Chair, because last time I didn't have the opportunity to say so. Now about the motion. I, as a member of the Pension Committee, I'm in support, and I'm sure our support for the Pension Fund Committee is 100%, but we cannot let the environment be destroyed. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Parry. Councillor Harper, please.
Hello, Chairman. I've not put my hand up.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you. Machine has a life of its own then. Okay. Now, I'm with fingers crossed. I'm now going to ask Councillor Madden if she wishes to use her right to speak.
I have my fingers crossed, Chairman, that nobody will interrupt
Yes, please, if I may. Firstly, thank you all who have spoken in support of the motion. You've stolen most of my speech, so I'm going to have to improvise as we go along, but some excellent points made. Thank you very much. The economic impacts of COVID-19 have left us at a tipping point as some institutions make firm their commitment to pushing for a green recovery, while others fall back on climate commitments in favour of propping up business as usual. Right now, we have a chance to set the example. We'll ask everyone else to prove that building back better is not just rhetoric, and to fully commit to everything that a green recovery might entail. Beyond the valuable work done to plan locally for a green sustainable recovery, an aspect of a green recovery that ought not to be overlooked is the divestment of pension funds. The idea of fossil fuel divestment is not new, and for many councils in the UK, it is something already being worked towards. But the state of progress and priority on divestment is not universal. And for every council leading the way in greening its pension fund, another one is lagging. So surely we should commit wholeheartedly to this. There is no doubt that the strain that COVID-19 has put and will continue to put on local government funding and service provision. In the face of a recession and at a time of uncertainty for both councils and individuals, putting pressure on pension funds to divest may seem a low priority. At face value, asking to pull funds from largely traditional safe and low-risk corporations may seem counterintuitive. However, in addition to risking the council's reputation, which has been brought up by others speaking before me, and of course contributing to the survival and continued reckless behaviour displayed by many large fossil fuel affiliated companies, keeping investments in dirty companies makes little sense from a purely financial case. We've heard already of many other councils: Derby, Monmouthshire, Lambeth, Islington, Sheffield, Stroud, Brighton, Birmingham. Even the London Mayor, though he may not be flavour of the month this week, has called for divestment from fossil fuels. You talk about this being generic. I would argue that, given that I had previously, months ago, written a speech in support of seconding this motion, but for reasons out with our control, we have only just started to discuss it today. We invest billions of pounds in our pension money into companies drilling for oil, gas, and oil. This makes climate change worse. Also, a side effect of this sort of thing is that the companies just walk away and leave the rubbish and the broken wells, etc., behind them as they go into administration and therefore evade any costs they should pay back into the community. I would also express my disappointment in the chair of the Pensions Committee. I am aware of the in-depth work doing on the committee, may not attend, but I do read the reports every now and then and commend it for what it's doing. But I do not see that it is within the remit purely of that committee. I think that this whole council should send out a strong message to our residents, to fellow councillors, to our government, who seem to be slopping along any old how, that here in Nottinghamshire, we care and we believe in the future for our children. Tom has been laughed at by driving a big car. All I'll say is, you can all leave your big cars at home. It will make my journey in on the bus a lot easier. You can also consider car share, which is another thing that we do in the independents when we do come into the county building. The other thing I would consider saying is that it's an important wide-ranging things, and councillors could possibly think amongst themselves as they go away that perhaps improving your housing facilities, the sustainability of Victorian properties, etc., might be within your own individual remit. So I myself, I am more than happy to second this. Thanks again to all those who put forward half my speech, and I commend this motion to the Chamber. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Hollis, do you wish to wind up for the motion?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Do I get 10 minutes?
Well, I'd like you to be sort of around about 6 minutes, in actual fact, to get within the hour.
I'll be five to keep it brief then.
Thank you.
And I do welcome all comments made, and particularly from the Labour group and the on the line members. I think I'll briefly read this first. We need to make our pension fund work for everyone. As more money comes out of fossil fuels, it's more sustainable alternatives. There will be growing risk of keeping one's money in fossil fuels. We don't want our pensions invested in fossil fuels and fracking. We want investment in renewables and clean energy, and a need to leave fossil fuels in the ground. It's plain wrong that money we put aside for our future should be used for that, to make that future worse. Ultimately, Mr. Chairman, it's as immoral as investing in pornography, arms and tobacco. Friends of the Earth in a report, November 2018, stated 8 funds are taking no or almost no action to protect their members from financial risk posed by climate change. This includes Nottinghamshire. Hundreds of residents campaign in groups across the county have expressed serious concerns, and environmental campaigners like Extinction Rebellion have been treated with utter contempt for just trying to get their voice heard. But then, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to turn to some of the speakers, which I do welcome all speakers. But turning firstly to Councillor Kerry, who of course chairs the committee, to suggest it undermines the committee is slightly ludicrous, because he chairs a committee which invests our council's money, as well as Nottingham City, the police, districts, boroughs. So he's investing our Nottinghamshire County Council money, which all 66 members on this meeting and full council control. So to suggest we're undermining it by saying that we want our money not being used to ruin the environment is slightly incorrect. I suppose it's almost like me giving someone money and say invest in it in what you like. And ultimately, I think it's morally the right thing to do to make sure we invest our money in non-environmental things. I'll pick up firstly on Councillor Pringle actually as well. He'll know from my interjection at the Pensions Fund Committee that I would have worded this motion extremely more hard-hitting if I really wanted to get my view across. And if I was the chairman of the Pensions Committee, we'd press the button on selling all shares today, not have to investigate. But I've genuinely, for the Mansfield Independents and Conservatives particularly, I've genuinely tried to meet them halfway by suggesting that we simply investigate it. Councillor Kerry, in his interjection, said that we are already doing it. And this meeting has been recorded, and I would love to see that played back to him. If he's already doing it, why can't we just simply vote to formalise what he's already doing? I'm not going to suggest that he does everything immediately, and I suggest actually we'll come to different conclusions of the investigation. But the very fact that Nottinghamshire County Council pledges and recognises that we need to make changes is a start in itself, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Barnfather suggested it was a generic motion. He'll probably be aware that we submitted this nearly 4 months ago now, 5 months ago, but due to the COVID and various other things, it got put back. And I'd simply say to him, if it's good enough for Shropshire, a heavily Conservative run council and the other councils that Councillor Madden listed. But why is it not good enough for us? Councillor Garner, I think it was an unnecessary comment. He'll be aware that I drive the newest Range Rover, which is frankly as environmentally good as anybody else. It's got low emissions, normal emissions compared to others. But I don't want to get personal, and I wouldn't suggest to him that he's a slum landlord and doesn't bring his properties up to environmental standards, which is a simple search online. I wouldn't say that in a formal meeting, Mr. Chairman. But
right, well, you just have done though, haven't you?
Oh, Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't
yes,
suggest.
so rather than that, can we now come to a conclusion?
But
because it's the
Mr.
time for
This-
now the vote.
This genuinely is, as I think Councillor Rhodes and other members have suggested, isn't a political motion. It's a motion that's been supported across the board politically in other local authorities, Conservative, Labour, Liberal and Independent alike. I think it's time that Nottinghamshire County Council said that we don't want our money ploughing into fossil fuels. And actually, financially, it's the right thing to do, you know, across. And if we'd have, for example, at the time of the committee, if we'd have pulled, for example, the last pensions committee, if we'd have pulled fossil fuels at that moment, we'd have saved ourselves considerable amount of money. As members will be aware, fossil fuel prices shrunk massively in February. So ultimately, investment in environmentally friendly things is actually financially the right thing to do, as other members have touched on. But I think the final point to make very simply is, and this kind of touches on Councillor Garner's point as well, we need to do everything we can individually as an organisation, whether it's, I mean, I don't eat meat a day a week. I live in a new build property, which is environmentally friendly. Etc., etc. We all need to take the steps. This council took the step not to have plastic cups, plastic bottles in the council chamber, which was a great step for the environment, Mr. Chairman. I'm now suggesting let's not invest over 700 million in firms that damage the environment. And that's all I have to conclude to say, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Garner, you've indicated you wish to raise an issue.
Certainly, Chairman. I'd like to make it. I'd just like to find out why I'm called a slum landlord. I have not had any council on my back. I've been a landlord for 20 odd years. So where does it come? A slum landlord.
Thank you, Councillor. Without sort of cutting you back, it was a gratuitous comment made. It is outside the code, and I would suggest that Councillor Hollis might wish to withdraw that particular statement.
No.
Do I take it that Councillor Hollis?
I'm waiting, Mr. Hollis.
It's Councillor Hollis, Councillor Gardner, and I think if members play the recording back, I think I made very clear I wouldn't suggest Councillor Gardner was a slum landlord.
You already said it twice, actually. So I think your dancing around the words wouldn't alter it at all. As I say, I think it's outside the code, and I would ask you to make an apology or withdraw the comment. It's unnecessary.
Thank you, Mr. Well, thank you for the opportunity to do so, and I would reiterate again and make clear that I'd never call Councillor Garner a slum landlord, Mr. Chairman.
Continue to keep saying it. Perhaps you can get where you want to be on that one. Very well. I will now go to the vote. Again, it will be a recorded vote. So, Anthony, can you go through the process?
Thank you, Chairman. Happy to, starting with Councillor Adair. Councillor Adair.
Yeah, get unmuted. Okay, against.
Thank you. Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Barnfather.
Against.
Oh dear.
Councillor Bosniak.
For.
Councillor Bradley.
Against.
Councillor Brooks.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Carr.
For.
Councillor John Clark.
For.
Councillor Neil Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cotty.
Against.
Councillor Creamer.
For the future.
Councillor Cutts.
Against.
Councillor Deakin.
For.
Councillor Dobson.
For my grandchildren.
Oh, God.
No.
I think,
it's
colleagues, there
time,
might be.
I think God will have out to do it.
Thank you, please. Thank you. Thank you.
So just a moment, colleagues. There might be a couple of councillors who are unmuted at the moment. Just a bit of background noise. If people could just pay attention to that, I'd be grateful. So, Councillor Dobson, I recorded your vote as for.
That's
Is
right.
that right? Yeah, thank you.
Correct.
Councillor Doddy.
Against.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fielding.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Fole.
For.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Guilfoyle.
For.
Councillor Girling.
Against.
Councillor Greaves.
Oh, for.
Councillor Hanley.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Henry.
For.
Councillor Henshaw.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Hopewell.
For.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Roger Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Kerry.
Against.
Councillor Knight.
Against.
Councillor Lawton.
Against.
Councillor Longdon.
Against.
Councillor Madden.
For.
Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Meal.
For.
Councillor Ogle.
Against.
Councillor Owen.
Against.
Councillor Payne.
For.
Councillor Peck.
For.
Councillor Place. Councillor Sheila Place.
Keeps going back. For.
Thank you, Sheila. Councillor Plant.
For.
Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Purdue Horan.
Against.
Councillor Quigley.
Against.
Councillor Rhodes.
For.
Councillor Kevin Rostance.
Against.
Councillor Phil Rostance.
Against.
Councillor Saddington.
Against.
Councillor Sissons.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
Again.
Councillor Simbaridis.
For.
Councillor Vickers.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Wallace.
Against.
Councillor Vice.
For.
Councillor Wetton.
For.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Woodhead.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And Councillor Zadrozny.
For.
Thank you, everyone. We'll just do a quick tot up and we'll come back to you.
Connection's okay then.
No, it didn't get through. The Tories write our election leaflets for us, don't they? Don't? Yeah.
Thank you. The result of that one is 32 members for the motion, 34 members against it. The motion falls. Before I just move on to the second of the two second of the three motions, can I say that when the committee sat and looked at our charter and the way that we operate, it did lay down conduct things. What I will warn people is I won't accept gratuitous insults to anyone, irrespective. And if people continue to do it, then I will take action. Thank you. Can I now call Councillor Rhodes to move the second motion, please?
Yes, you can, Chairman. I was gratuitously insulted earlier on, but of course that didn't count, I suspect. Right, motion 2, I'll read it out. This council welcomes the government's commitment to the much needed A46 Newark bypass in the recent budget. You'll appreciate this is a pre-lockdown motion. However, this council is disappointed that the equally important and much delayed electrification of the Midland Main Line through Nottinghamshire continues to be ignored by the government. Therefore, this council resolves to write to the Secretary of State for Transport, the Right Honourable Grant Shapps, to further emphasise the necessity for this project to go ahead and receive appropriate funding. I raised this very issue the other day, Chairman, in the reaching for some papers in the COVID committee meeting when we were looking at a paper entitled Framework for the Economic Recovery. And I looked for the electrification of the Midland Main Line as part of our plan for economic recovery. I struggled to find it, but I did eventually find it on page 34 in a paragraph that just said, making improvements to existing rail infrastructures, for example, electrification, to support and underpin the case for East Midlands section of High Speed 2. Well, that's not quite good enough. We should be shouting from the rooftops that the East Midlands has been overlooked and undersold for many years by successive governments. And one of the reasons, it's actually, there's evidence to support that. This is not just my my opinion. There's evidence to support that. But one of the reasons why we've been overlooked is because the East Midlands Main Line is not electrified. It's slow, it's old-fashioned, and actually it's letting the recovery and the economic sustainability of this area down. This whole region has been affected by this. And, you know, recovery is something that we're all hoping for. We're being told that we're about to enter the biggest recession this country's experienced in 300 years. It's a very serious scenario that we're entering into as a result of the COVID crisis. But you can't have recovery unless you've got good transport infrastructure and unless you've got good connectivity. Without those things, recovery cannot happen. I therefore think that we need to be doing much more as a council to make our voice heard. And frankly, our members of parliament need to shake themselves down a little bit as well and start calling for this a lot more than they are doing. And I'm quite angry about the fact that members of parliament in some regions in this country have far more to say about economic recovery than our members of parliament do. We keep hearing about the north. The north. I was looking at it this morning on breakfast television. It's all about the north again. It's not about the Midlands or the North Midlands. It's about the north of England. And again, these people are speaking with one voice and getting the investment that they need at our expense, really. So economically, Chairman, and environmentally, it's the right thing to do. And I'm therefore calling in this motion for the leader of the council to write to the Secretary of State for Transport in the strongest possible terms and demand, Chairman, the electrification of the Midland Main Line as part of our economic recovery in this region. We don't have that, we're always going to be hamstrung. And I do hope Chairman, that every member of this council will support that call. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Creamer, are you to second the motion, please?
Yes, I'm second. And I'd just like to speak just for a couple of minutes that what Alan has said most of the important points. If I can just go into a little bit of history of it. The actual Midland Main Line was started to be attacked in the 70s and 80s when they started removing lines between Leicester and the south. It was called dequadrification because there was 4 lines. Now there's only 2, and I know that because I was part of that working on the railway. They've started putting that back in, going south. So that is some work being done, but it's not enough. The actual process now of putting in dual operation units, whether part diesel and part electric, is asking for a disaster. It's going to put back pure electrification for another 10, 20, 30 years because those units will last 30, 40 years. And that does not help the economic case of the East Midlands at all. So yes, there is progress being done, very slow progress, and actually putting in brakes on for future electrification. It sounds good up front that there's something being done, but it's actually putting brakes on for future electrification. And if I can just read out something from Grant Shapps, which he said today, and although it's Yorkshire, this is what we have been saying from all parts of this council. What Grant Shapps is saying here, we need to reiterate it back to him. Actions speak louder than words. And when it comes to the history of transport infrastructure in Yorkshire, there has been a lot of the latter and not nearly enough of the former. And we are in that position as councils, as Labour, as Tory, whatever the council colour. We've been asking for electrification from this government, from our previous government. It doesn't really matter. What matters, again, is the future. It ties into a previous debate we've had on environment. Electrification is the proper way to go. And this halfway measure, if I can just go into a little bit of history again, one of the reasons that we haven't got full electrification in this country, where most of Europe has, is because we took a halfway step from steam. We went steam diesel in a lot of areas, and those diesels lasted 30, 40, 50 years. That's exactly what's going to happen with this dual process on the East Midlands on the Midland Main Line. We need to ask very strongly, very clearly for electrification, not just for Nottinghamshire. Nottinghamshire, if you like, trades with everybody else, Leicestershire, Derbyshire. We need full electrification all the way. So that's what I'll leave it at that. It's been a long time. I'm hoping everybody in the council will actually support this because it's the right thing to do, both infrastructure for recovery, as Alan has already said, and for our future, as Alan has already said. So I urge everybody to actually accept the amendment, accept it as it is, and vote it through. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now open it for debate. Councillor Cutts.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I say we broadly welcome the constructive tone of the Labour Group's motion. We recognise that the well-deserved investment that's taking place in our country, and would like to propose a small amendment which recognises the progress which has been made since the topic of the Midland Main Line electrification was last raised in the Chamber. This administration has expressed on numerous occasions that the Midland Main Line electrification programme should be extended past Market Harborough and through the East Midlands, but it's important that we present our case to government in a way that makes clear that this is not only the benefit of Nottinghamshire, but to the Midlands and indeed to the whole country. With these words of introduction, Chairman, I would like to present a minor amendment, and I'm going to pause as officers may display the amendment on our screen.
Thank you. Members should now have that on the screen together with the red, which obviously are the changes.
That'll be a no.
For those, I'm hoping that all of you've got it on your screens. Just to make sure, we're now going to email it out as well. Then you will have it both on screen and within the email system. Anybody not? Sorry?
I've got it. Yep.
Yeah, anybody not?
I haven't, Stuart.
Sorry, Roger Jackson. Roger? Yeah.
I have it.
Yeah. Has it gone? Right, the email's gone out. So, Councillor Cutts, if you'd like to continue.
Thank you, Chairman. The amendment then would read, this council welcomes the government's commitment to the much needed A46 Newark bypass in the recent budget. This council also urges the government to prioritise the equally important and much delayed electrification of the Midland Main Line through Nottinghamshire, as highlighted in the Midlands Engine Rail Plan published last year by Midlands Connect. This council resolves to write to the Secretary of State for Transport, the Right Honourable Grant Shapps, in support of the work being conducted by the Midlands Engine and Midlands Connect to further emphasise the necessity for this project to go ahead and to receive appropriate funding. The original motion, the original motion committed the A46 New York commended the A46 New York bypass, which I'm glad to see has cross-party support, as it feels that a considerable period of underinvestment over several decades in Nottinghamshire is finally coming to an end. However, I should point to the other substantial infrastructure we've had: £150 million for the A453, £40 million for the Gedling Access Road, £22 million for the 6146097 junctions, £20 million for potholes, £5 million of maintenance challenge improvements on Mansfield-Ashfield regeneration route, and £2.5 million on cycle routes around Nottinghamshire. Chairman, as you will see, the amendment seeks to reinforce the original motion by drawing on the work of the Midlands Engine. Members will know that we play a major role in this organisation under the chairmanship of Sir John Peace, and we continue to lobby for Nottinghamshire and the East Midlands and any practical steps that we can take to achieve our ambitions. We have supported the Midlands Engine to join up the Midlands with a sustainable, productive 21st century transport network, including investment in the railways, and the East Midlands has been deprived for many decades of this. The Midlands Engine released in September 2019 the Midlands Engine Railway Strategy. This report to government prioritised along before the delivery of the HS2 in order to support the wider levelling up of the agenda. These recommendations focused on connecting the Midlands in a way which would maximise the benefits of high-speed rail and ensure that everyone benefits. The Midlands, of course, is the Midlands as a whole, and I've often said how long it takes to get to Birmingham from Nottinghamshire. Midlands Connect has already submitted a business case to the Department of Transport, and in turn the government has tasked HS2 Limited with considering the feasibility of the junction works, which was further work being done to cement the need for further electrification. We will continue to support this work as it's carried out, and it's right that we ensure that it remains high on the Department of Transport's agenda in the meantime. The East Midlands has been denied under successive governments the proper levelling up of the agenda. In fact, it's probably 40 or 50 years. That's over four decades. It's only by speaking with a single cohesive voice, pooling our resources, that we've been able to elicit a response from government, and we shall continue to champion the success of Nottinghamshire and indeed the East Midlands as a whole. It will be vital we recover from this pandemic and allow the economy to go from strength to strength, and that includes electrification of the Midland Main Line. Please be in no doubt that the Conservative Group administration support the electrification of this line, as well as the other investment into the East Midlands. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cutts. Is your motion, your amendment seconded, please?
Yes, Chairman, I second the motion and reserve my right to speak on it.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes, would you like an adjournment while you consider the amendment?
Yes, please, Chairman, I would. I'd like 10 minutes if you'd allow that.
Fine. Well, I make it 14:37, so we'll say 14:47. If that's okay. Thank you. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Cheers.
Can we now please pause the broadcast? That's for the technical team. Thank you.
HS2 is so important to the Midlands because we need to get our goods and services, our people to be where they need to be in the fastest possible time. We live in a fast-moving world with different economies moving at different paces. We can't afford to be left behind. If we get left behind, we'll continue to be a low-wage economy, and that's not fair. It's really important for the people who live here, and it's more important still for the generation to come.
I'm Gemma and this is my husband Paul, and we're both foster carers. I think initially we were a little bit anxious ourselves about going to panel. It sounded quite scary, but it wasn't at all. It was just a really friendly chit chat with a group of people around a table. It was more of a celebration really of us being there and of us, you know, wanting to become foster carers. The County Council offer a fair rate of pay, so we get paid dependent on our level of experience. So after you've done it for a while, then your level of pay will go up based on your experience and level of training that you've done. We've also got a network hub, which is a I'm Gemma and this is my husband Paul, and we're both foster carers. I think initially we were a little bit anxious ourselves about going to panel. It sounded quite scary, but it wasn't at all. It was just a really friendly chit chat with a group of people around a table. It was more of a celebration really of us being there and of us, you know, wanting to become foster carers. The County Council offer a fair rate of pay, so we get paid dependent on our level of experience. So after you've done it for a while, then your level of pay will go up based on your experience and level of training that you've done. We've also got a network hub, which is a foster carer support group, and it's just an informal get-together. We feel so valued as a foster carer for Nottinghamshire County Council. Everyone's so caring and wants what's best for you as a family. The matching process is really careful, so they listen to our needs, and you know, they would never think of placing a child that wouldn't fit in our environment. As a foster family, we try and just make it everyday normal life, try and bring some stability and love to that child that's staying with us, and give them experiences that perhaps they've not experienced before. We love going out on day trips together, and for example today we've gone pony trekking. Nottinghamshire's a great place to foster because we've got so much on our doorstep. There's so much that we can do. I feel really lucky that we're able to foster here.
Family, we have 10 pets. They are 3 Westies, Saffron, Belle and Beau, 5 tortoises, Herbie and Bernadette, Amy and Sheldon and Penny, and we have the 2 rabbits who are Poppy and Daisy. And the fact that there is several dogs I find really helps, because we've got several children and everybody can have a cuddle at the same time and everybody can get that attention really. The children that we've had and young people that we've had have often spent more time with the dogs initially, because you can have a chat if you want to chat, you don't get quizzed, you don't get asked anything, and they're just lovely company. So this is what we call the den, and it's our semi-independent room, but this goes down really well. It's got its own entrance, it's got its own set of rules. It is somewhere to practice being independent but safely. We're all in the house, they've got access to the house all the time. I've got a key for the den as well, so it's still one home, but this is a separate area for privacy. We've got rooms in the house for younger, under 16-year-olds. This is probably my favourite and most important thing, and it's our welcome book. So we don't really discuss this book, it's just left on the child's bed and in their own time they just go through it. But what is so important to me, because it introduces our family, there's photographs of everybody that's in our house and a little bit about them as well, what things they like, how old they are, And I think that it's, in the early days, it can be so daunting, and it's like, who am I with? And it's actually really nice to have a little bit of an explanation, and they also can create talking points. Because food and meals are such a high anxiety area for nearly all of the children that we've had, I like them to know what's coming, and I like them to be able to plan and not worry about their evening meal. So we have a Monday to Friday system, and on Sunday I'll plan out what we're going to have, and they simply just tick their name if they want it. And I have found that since we've introduced this system, I'm not getting asked at breakfast what's for tea, because children were obviously concerned. They were asking the question, and it's there, they open it up, and it's really lovely because spaghetti bolognese always goes down really well, and on Sunday you can hear the little whispers, I can't wait till Wednesday. Before a new foster child comes to join our family, it is an anxious time, but I would say it's more exciting than anything else. And we've got a lot of trust in the county council for matching us to the right placement. So before that child arrives, we don't question, are they right for us, because we're confident that they will be. I would say to people thinking about fostering to ring the local authority and ask as many questions as you can. When I tell people I'm a foster carer, a lot of people immediately say, I've thought about that, or I want to do that, and haven't. And I'll always question, well, why did you not make that call, or why did you stop? And it's often a fear that could be just, I don't know what the word is. it could just be resolved so quickly, and sometimes just asking questions and makes you realise that the things you're worried about aren't really there, or you can speak to somebody that's experienced it and gone through it, and have come out the other side and think, actually no, it is a really rewarding thing to do. I can't see myself doing anything different.
My son Josh recently turned 2. After we moved to the area, I needed to find a new nursery for him. A colleague mentioned that the Notts Help Yourself website had a list of approved childcare providers. The site was easy to navigate, and I was able to filter the search to my local area. Notts Help Yourself was intuitive to use and offered me a wide variety of options. The site gave me access to a whole host of opportunities and provided me with a wealth of useful information. It was brilliant to see Josh settling in so well on his first day. I'm happy knowing he's well looked after.
HS2 is so important to the Midlands because we need to get our goods and services, our people to be where they need to be in the fastest possible time. We live in a fast-moving world with different economies moving at different paces. We can't afford to be left behind. If we get left behind, we'll continue to be a low-wage economy, and that's not fair. It's really important for the people who live here, and it's more important still for the generation to come.
I'm Gemma, and this is my husband Paul, and we're both foster carers. I think initially we were a little bit anxious ourselves about going to panel. It sounded quite scary, but it wasn't at all. It was just a really friendly chit-chat with a group of people around a table. It was more of a celebration really of us being there and of us, wanting to become foster carers. The County Council offer a fair rate of pay, so we get paid dependent on our level of experience. So after you've done it for a while, then your level of pay will go up based on your experience and level of training that you've done. We've also got a network hub, which is a foster carer support group, and it's just an informal get-together. We feel so valued as a foster carer for Nottinghamshire County Council.
you've had the time to look at it. Do you accept it or what?
Well, Chair, it's difficult in these circumstances, but we have managed to get some kind of consensus in the Labour group. We will accept the amendment, but I must stress the need for full electrification, and I hope that the council will pursue this need for full electrification as well. So taking that on board, we will accept the amendment as tabled.
Right, okay. Right, so the amended motion is now become the motion, and I'm open to take speakers.
Okay, so I've got Gordon Wheeler.
Councillor Wheeler, please. Sorry, Gordon, if I may.
Steve Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. Just
Ben
unmute
Bradley.
myself. Thank you. I just thought throw something else into the mix, Chairman. I was joint committee.
Steve Carr, Gordon Wheeler, Ben Bradley.
Okay. Can I start again?
Yes, please.
Okay. I was chairman of the Joint Committee on Strategic Planning and Transport Committee. I say I was chairman on a 2-year rotation. It's between the county and the city. The chairmanship has only recently passed over the city. The reason I mention that, through this committee, which has members from both Nottinghamshire City and Nottinghamshire County Council, sitting on that committee. Now, the important thing about this is we have written through that committee more than one letter, in fact, quite a few letters, several letters to the government, saying exactly what this motion is just saying now. But just to let you know, there's broad support outside of the Nottinghamshire County Council working with the city. This is very unusual. We don't often work together. This is one of the committees which brings both the city and the county together with the same objective of getting the electrification of the Midlands main line through Nottinghamshire, exactly what you're asking for, Alan. That's what we want to happen. Let us have gone to the government through this committee. I know, as I just said, because the chairmanship of the committee has passed the city council recently, but that won't change anything. The commitment is still the same. Councillor Creamer sat on the committee and he's seconding this motion on many occasions, and hopefully he will agree with what I've just said. The commitment from the committee to the electrification of the Midland Main Line is total and complete. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will support this amended motion. I think it's even more important now that the East Midlands are ahead of HS2, which is going to be some considerable time off, that we get full electrification of the Midland Main Line, if for nothing else, but to actually try and get back to the economic situation that we were in prior to March the 23rd. I don't have to remind people of what's happened, but the impact it's had on the economy of the county is horrendous. I don't know if anybody else has seen the unemployment forecasts for the county moving forward. Broxtowe will go up, hopefully not, but this is the forecast, from 4% to 11.5% unemployment. The city up to 17% unemployment. Ashfield higher than Broxtowe. Mansfield higher than Broxtowe. I don't think we're in the situation, Mr. Chairman, of sitting here and saying that Midland Main Line is going to move us forward and bring us automatic growth. What it will do is actually contribute to us getting back to where we were economically. And that's the hard reality of the situation that we're in, not being helped at all by the prospect of a no-deal Brexit on the 31st of December, which will also harm our industry. But this is the situation that we're in. And whilst I accept that the Newark desperately needs a bypass, I agree with that. But again, it appears that the government are putting car ahead of rail. And it would have been fantastic and brilliant for them to actually say, Yeah, Newark needs needs a bypass. And by the way, we're going to honour our election commitment in 2015 when we said we were going to electrify the Midland Main Line, and then 6 weeks later, Chris Grayling withdrew it. It needs to be done now, really, for the economy and the people of the East Midlands. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to echo some of the things that had been said previously and to make a point about a solution to all of this. I'll try and keep it brief. Councillor Cutts is right that there are a number of examples of investment in our region and things that are progressing. She mentioned the 46, the 614, 617, reopening railways fund, and lots of things that are either happening or heading in our direction. On issues like this, it is much easier now for us to make this case. Obviously, coronavirus has impacted on all of our priorities, but it's much easier for us to make this case to government, frankly, now that we have a full set of Conservative MPs speaking with one voice, and we've been able to get together and make the case for things like the Freeport proposals, Development Corporation, and all of those kind of issues in recent weeks with the Treasury. We can make the case for this too, but it exemplifies the various disparate priorities of different groups and councils across the East Midlands, because this isn't a massive priority for other East Midlands councils. This isn't a massive priority for other voices that speak on behalf of the East Midlands, and it's part of the ongoing issue. The reason why the West Midlands gets almost twice as much per person in terms of transport investment as the East Midlands does is because it has one clear set of priorities and one clear shopping list for the region from government. And we could deliver this if we had that clear single set of priorities, and there'll be members, I'm sure, who know where I'm going with this. But when we sat here, it's incredibly frustrating to hear all the time in this chamber and in other parts and discussions across the area that we can't cut services or raise taxes, that we can't seem to make a clear case for East Midlands priorities, that we don't seem to get our fair share of investment. We keep waving the answer to all of those questions in front of everybody. And the answer is to have the same kind of single authority and devolved powers that the West Midlands has, that clear voice for the East Midlands, which is something we can only do if we rationalise our local government and move to a unitary system. And government's been pretty clear about that. The evidence of the level of investment that has gone into the West Midlands since that has happened is overwhelming. So I just thought it was well worth making that clear, Chairman, that the answer to getting this investment and to getting these priorities straight is there on the table, and all it needs is for certain opposition councillors to get out of the way and let us do it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hollis.
So the West Midlands has district councils.
Sorry,
The
Councillor
opposition's
Carr.
not going to get out the way either. This is called democracy.
Councillor Hollis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Spare me 1 second. I have to admit, I love how Councillor Bradley can crowbar unitary authorities into a debate about transport. Very, very impressive. But only a week ago, the Express and Star in the West Midlands travelled to Southampton docks to catch a glimpse of the future of rail travel in their region. Train operators Avanti West Coast says the sleek new hybrid multiple units based on the Japanese A train will revolutionise rail travel in the West Midlands, making for cleaner, greener and more comfortable journeys along the UK's busiest rail lines. The cutting-edge trains, which run on both diesel and electric power, will replace the existing diesel trains along the West Coast Main Line, which serves Shrewsbury, Telford, Wellington, Wolverhampton, Sandwell, Dudley and Birmingham. Here in the East Midlands, the future of our transport system is less certain, Mr. Chairman. Planned electrification and line speed upgrades to the Midland Main Line up to Nottingham, Derby and Sheffield were cancelled by Government Transport Secretary Chris Grayling on the 20th of July 2017. The plans were designed to reduce rail travel times between Nottingham and London by just 90 minutes, while direct connections to Eurostar services through St Pancras International would mean Nottingham was less than 5 hours from Paris and Brussels. Obviously, the decision was met with absolute fury from rail campaigners from the East Midlands. Indeed, on the 5th of October 2017, all political parties in this chamber work together to put together a composite motion calling for this decision to be reversed. Councillor Cotty told this council, the government's decision to cancel electrification of the Midlands Main Line while continuing to fund the 30 billion Crossrail 2 project in London is particularly unfair to this region. And I'll tell you, Mr. Chairman, he was absolutely right. Our region has always been the poor relation when it comes to transport funding. Latest figures show across the UK, £481 was spent on transport per person, but only £268 in the East Midlands, while spending a staggering £903 per head in London. The government talks the talk, but rarely delivers for the East Midlands. We've been let down for too long here. It has a dramatic negative impact on the economic prosperity, a huge effect on social mobility, and leaves the East Midlands the poorer for it. We fully back the plan to write to Grant Shapps. His government have presided over a number of broken promises. Conservative promise over transport have run into the red wall. We do have concerns about the amendment, however, as we feel it's letting Midlands Connect off the hook and accept no responsibility for the comprehensive failure of Notts County Council to make the case for electrification of the Midlands Main Line. The Ashfield Independents would like to thank the Labour Group for bringing the motion to the Council, which we fully support. Things need to change. And Mr. Chairman, just briefly, with your indulgence, I just to say on the last, I made a few comments in the last agenda item, and I'd just like to say that I apologise if Councillor Garner feels I said something inappropriate, particularly if he misconstrued anything I may have said in the last agenda item, Mr. Chairman. So I do apologise if he misconstrued anything I said in the last agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Henshaw, please.
Thank you, Chair. I can support the amendment and hope that this will be another instance of us as a local authority working together to try and get a much needed improvement to the Middle Main Line. The total electrification of this line is way overdue, and as we discussed in our first motion in relation to the environment, obviously by maintaining or putting this line as an electric or an electrified line, it will have a beneficial effect on the environment by replacing the dirty diesel engines and trains, and obviously by addition of new and clean rolling stock will have a beneficial effect on the environment. And I think that's something that we should also be highlighting when we discuss the issue of electrification. I take note of Councillor Bradley's points, and I hope from his nebulous contribution that he did say that he would actually lobby and push on behalf of this authority that we lobby ministers to make sure that we do achieve electrification sooner rather than later. But instead, he sort of latches on to the amendment and brings in the discussion around local government reorganisation, which, you know, that debate is to be had. But it's not so much he's got to convince us as a Labour group about that. I think he should be using his good offices and time to convince people in his own group in relation to that issue. So in saying those few words, Chair, I'd just like to hope that we would all support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Payne, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does dismay me a little bit and worry me that news comes from Councillor Bradley as a Conservative Member of Parliament that it's easier to get money for your region if you've got more Tory MPs. I thought decisions were made by government based on whether an area needed investment, not on whether you had 7 or 8 blue MPs rather than red MPs. And I thought decisions were being made based on the commitment in the government's manifesto in 2019, which said that they would level up every part of the UK, not just investing in our great towns and cities as well as our rural and coastal areas, but giving them far more control over how the investment is made, Mr. Chairman. I think we also just need to scotch the myth that the reason the East Midlands hasn't received its fair share of funding is because it doesn't have clear priorities or a clear shopping list. Funding isn't decided by local councils or by Midlands Engine or Midlands Connect or even Nottinghamshire County Council. It's decided by Her Majesty's Treasury and the Department for Transport. And we've seen, as Councillor Bradley highlighted, the disparity in the official figures that the Treasury released in 2018-19, where the East Midlands is the bottom of the pile with £268 per head in terms of transport infrastructure. Meanwhile, you have areas like the North East, the East, that have £493 and £486 respectively being spent per head. I also think, it's a slight cheek of Councillor Bradley to talk about having clear priorities when he turns a debate about the Midland Main Line into one about local government reorganisation. Stick to the topic that we're debating, please, Councillor Bradley. I really hope that the government sticks to the commitment that they've made, because at the end of the day, the only reason this Midland Main Line electrification hasn't happened is because the Treasury and the government have decided it's not going to happen and have broken a promise 3 years ago. And 3 years on, it's now long overdue, as Councillor Cotty said before, that the electrification is put back on the page and that we move on with it. It's shameful that it was cancelled in the same week that a cheque was written for Crossrail for £30 billion for Crossrail, and that we were losing out in the East Midlands. And it's time for the government now to put its money where its mouth is and make sure that this electrification can go ahead. And I commend both Councillors Rhodes and Councillor Cutts, who have both spoken vociferously about this issue in the chamber in a cross-party fashion. I think the amendment is a sensible amendment, and I'll be supporting the amendment as substantive motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have no other speakers, and unless you indicate, I'm going to Councillor Rhodes for him to sum up. Councillor Rhodes.
Sorry, Chair, I muted myself. This was not quite expected. Yes, I've nothing to add. I think we've had a good debate, Chair. I do hope that we can concentrate our efforts on the complete electrification of the Midland Main Line, and that in itself will help to kickstart the economic recovery in our area. I know in our region, and we're not just talking about Nottinghamshire. I recognise that, but please don't let's be distracted by talk of unitary status. This is, as Michael Payne rightly says, this should be based on need, not on whether we follow the carrot that the government want to dangle in front of our noses. That shouldn't be how this country is governed. And if it is, frankly, it's shameful. So let's talk with one voice, speak with one voice about the need for Midland Main Line electrification, about the need for investment in our region, and about the need to make sure that this region is on the front foot when it comes to economic recovery and not hamstrung with situations such as we've got with the Midland Main Line and other major investment projects. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We're now going to go to the vote. Again, it'll be recorded. I accept it's a clunky way of doing it, although everybody will make. I'm going to try.
Chairman, I reserve my right to speak.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I do apologise to you, sir.
Thank you for that. But just to sum up briefly, everything has been said, and I think what Kay and even Alan has said at the end there, but also what Ben has said, and I think that's very, very important, that now we have a group of parliamentarians in Nottinghamshire that we hope will actually do the work for Nottinghamshire and the East Midlands that hasn't been done in Westminster for a very, very long time, to get some real funding into this area. And Ben, I hope that you and the role that you play will be able to bring that about, and that Midlands Connect, Midlands Engine, and all those other institutions that are there to help to support us to get what we want, including the electrification of Midland Main Line further north, that we can bring that about and bring that about rapidly. So, because as we come out of COVID, that's the economic growth. Those are the areas, along with all the other things that are in the pipeline, that are going to help to deliver Nottinghamshire's economic wealth for the future. So I'm glad that you're getting behind this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do apologise, and I also apologise to Councillor Rhodes. I should have picked up, of course, that Reg was in there, and I wouldn't have just dropped you into it. My apologies. Even I get it wrong.
No apology necessary, Chairman. You're doing a good job.
Thank you. So we're now going to go to the vote. It's a recorded vote. I'll hand over to Anthony.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to start with Councillor Adair, please.
I'm voting for the amended motion.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Barnfather.
For.
Councillor Bosniak.
For.
Councillor Bradley.
For.
Councillor Brooks. Nikki Brooks.
Sorry, I'm sorry about that. For.
Thank you, Nikki. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Butler.
For.
Councillor Carr.
For.
Councillor John Clark.
For.
Councillor Neil Clark.
For.
Councillor Cotty.
For.
Freemer.
For.
Councillor Cutts.
For.
Councillor Deakin.
For.
Councillor Dobson. Councillor
Maureen
Dobson. I'll come back to Maureen. Councillor Dobson.
And 4, please.
Thank you, Maureen. Councillor Dodson. Maureen, I've got your vote.
She said 4.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I've got Councillor Dobson's vote.
The girl boy,
Councillor Doddy.
4.
Councillor Elliott.
4.
Councillor Fielding.
4.
Councillor Fole.
4.
Councillor Garner.
4.
Councillor Guilfoyle.
4.
Councillor Girling.
4.
Councillor Greaves.
4.
Councillor Handley.
4.
Councillor Harper.
4.
Councillor Henry. Councillor Henshaw.
4.
Councillor Hollis. Councillor Tom Hollis. I'll come back to you, Tom. Councillor Hopewell.
I've lost me.
4.
I'll try Tom again. Councillor Hollis. Nope. Councillor Richard Jackson.
4.
Councillor Roger Jackson.
4.
Councillor Kerry.
4.
Councillor Knight.
4.
Councillor Lawton.
4.
Councillor Longdon.
4.
Councillor Madden.
4.
Councillor Martin.
4.
Councillor Meal.
4.
Councillor Ogle.
4.
Councillor Owen.
4.
Councillor Payne.
4.
Councillor Peck.
4.
Councillor Place.
4.
Councillor Plant.
4.
Councillor Pringle.
4.
Councillor Purdue Horan.
4.
Councillor Quigley.
4.
Councillor Rhodes.
4.
Councillor Kevin Rostons.
4.
Councillor Phil Rostons.
4.
Councillor Saddington.
4.
Councillor Sissons.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Taylor.
4.
Councillor Simbaridis.
4.
Councillor Vickers.
4.
Councillor Walker.
4.
Councillor Wallace.
4.
The Vice.
4.
Councillor Wetton.
4.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Woodhead.
4.
Councillor Wright.
4.
Councillor Zadrozny.
4.
And I'll come back to Councillor Tom Hollis.
4. Chairman.
Thank you, Tom. So it's a close run thing, Chairman, but it's carried.
Lovely. The motion is carried unanimously. Thank you very much for your cooperation in respect of that one. We'll now move on to the last and final one, which is motion 3. And I call on Councillor Martin. Sorry. I call on Councillor Martin to propose the motion, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I propose this motion. The council believes greater investment in repairing Nottinghamshire's roads and pavements is urgently needed, and our long-term, more sustainable solutions must also be found, including earlier detection, intervention, and better, more sustainable repair materials and technologies. This council notes that Nottinghamshire County Council has the highest number of potholes across the whole of the country, with more than 250,000 reported in the space of 2 years as of last December. This council also believes that the use of VFX has been, this council further notes that between January 17 and June 19, Nottinghamshire County Council received 253,920 reports of potholes. This is 100,000 more than any other county in the country. This council also believes that the use of VFX has been an abject failure whilst being used to carry out emergency road repairs. The product is clearly failing, with many potholes left in an even worse condition. This council further notes the impact of the coronavirus lockdown has had on the Highways, Capital and Revenue Programme. Therefore, this council calls for an urgent investigation into the use of VFX and its effectiveness across Nottinghamshire, a report to come before the Communities and Place Review and Development Committee reviewing this council's performance. Further to this, we call for a long-term plan to deal effectively with residents' complaints, a review into whether the 2021 Highways, Capital and Revenue Programme is equitable for each borough and district in Nottinghamshire, the Communities and Place Committee to receive a report into the deliverability of the 2021 Highways, Capital and Revenue Programme, and the failure of this council to complete the 1920 programmes. I propose this motion, and I'll take my right to speak now, Chair, if that's possible. This is, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the largest complaints that we all get as councillors, and I feel like I've been here before. In December 2017, we had a very, very similar debate about a very similar issue. The following equitable distribution of funding for the district and boroughs across this next year is 4.39 million for Rushcliffe, Newark and Sherwood 3.855 million, Bassett Law 3.82 million, Broxtowe 3.1 million, 3.085 million actually, Gedlin 2.585 million, Ashfield 2.75 million, and Mansfield 2.2 million. So the county put in 1.64 extra into Rushcliffe than in Ashfield, and a whopping 2.19 million extra into Rushcliffe than in Mansfield. So it must be a real kick in the teeth for our local MPs who recently, last Saturday, went on Radio Mansfield and said that it's down to the Ashfield Independents who surfaces what, where, when in actual fact, our Conservative MPs have done worse in their areas than anywhere else. So we're calling for more equitable spend of highways funding. It's the fact that this council did receive more complaints about potholes than in any other service area in the council. In August 2018, a video was posted by a Huthway businessman, Brian Tonks, and it showed Veer workmen pouring material into a hole outside a shop on Main Street, and then they drove away from the scene. VFX has been an unmitigated disaster on the public presence of this county council, and it's about time something was done about it. And surely it's false economy, because of the 250,000 potholes that were reported as of last December, I've asked the question at the Communities in Place and full council in the past, how many have been refilled more than once? And I've still to this date never received an answer. And the reason I haven't received an answer is because it's a huge amount. So surely it's false economy, and it needs to be reviewed by the Communities in Place Development Review Committee. And, you know, money is still being poured into other areas and it's just not equitably shared across the county. And
I can tell you here and now that in Selston Parish this year, there will be no roads resurfaced whatsoever. And my residents are constantly complaining to me every single day about the condition of our roads. So where will it all end? So I recommend this motion to the council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. The motion is, I understand, seconded by Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to second that motion, but I would reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. I will then open it up to debate. Councillor Cotty, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me a second, please. It's IT moving around again. Right, thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Well, anybody think there's an election coming, wouldn't they? But I would like to recommend to members to actually vote against this motion. There's parts I can agree with, but sadly it also contains misleading statements, contradictions, and a proposal to duplicate work that's already been done by the Communities and Place Review and Development Committee, which ultimately makes the motion illogical. The first paragraph of the motion states the council believes greater investment in repairing Nottinghamshire roads and pavements is urgently needed, and that long-term, more sustainable solutions must also be found. And I agree with that. And I've spoken many times about the huge backlog of roads repairs that this administration has inherited. And it takes many years of neglect for roads to deteriorate to an extent where large numbers of potholes appear. The current administration did not create the problem. And when deterioration is accelerated by extreme factors like severe weather and flooding, surfaces break up as fast, if not faster, than we can repair them. This is not true of our A and B roads, as we are comparable on quality with other councils, but we do have a problem with our other roads. At some point, an incoming administration has to confront this problem, and we did, and we are. But we have only begun the long process of reversing years of neglect. The Conservative Mansfield Independent administration has invested a record £107 million in repairing our roads over the past 4 years. We released 20 million of funding within weeks of taking office. And we've also had some serious help from government to the tune of 86 million. And yes, we do need greater investment. And whilst we continue to press government for more funding, the truth is that local government and central government comes out of the same pocket. It's the taxpayers' pocket. Councillor Martin's motion states we must look at earlier detection and intervention. Again, I agree. That's why we've deployed operatives all over the county to monitor and report defects. It's why we've made easier than ever before for the public to report potholes through call centres and online, including My Nots app. And our willingness to confront a historic problem is precisely why we're receiving record numbers of pothole reports, which are welcome, and even if the figures are misused for political attacks. I also agree that we must constantly seek better, more sustainable repair materials and technologies. And we've invested 750,000 in spray injection chip patching and also mechanical patching with long-lasting hotbox technology. And we'll continue to look for new technologies. The next part of the motion is nonsense from a governance viewpoint. If you've already concluded that Firefix is an abject failure, why would you propose a review in its effectiveness as a proposed action? Anyway, Firefix is not a failure. It's the first step in a long-term strategy. It allows crews to make fast, immediate repairs to make roads safe. Some minor roads, this can be all that's required, but on larger, busier residence roads, it buys valuable time for us to fund and programme more extensive resurfacing works. In the motion, you note the impact that the coronavirus lockdowns had on Highways Capital and Revenue Programme, and that's a fair comment. But in your last bullet point, you criticise the Council's failure to complete the 2019-20 programme. That programme hasn't failed. Some elements were delayed by significant flooding incidents.
in June and September and early this year, which temporarily diverted resources away from the original plan. And then, as you acknowledge, we face another hurdle caused by COVID-19 lockdown and social distancing requirements. But Vire's crews are out there now, resuming the work on the outstanding projects as fast and as safely as they can. Finally, we get the frequent implication or accusation that we're not equitable in our distribution of road maintenance funds across the county. Even though I've explained many times you don't want to listen, that the amount spent in monetary terms has to be viewed in the context of the percentage of the road network that lies in each district. That is a government guidance. It's been there for many, many years, but you still ignore it. My task is to serve the whole county, and that includes Ashfield. Even if I was inclined to politicise the distribution of funds, which I'm not, it would be a strange decision considering that there is a Conservative Member of Parliament representing every district in Nottinghamshire. And I'm sure Lee Anderson was the last person you want to disappoint. So I can't support this motion, Chairman, but if nothing else, it at least re-emphasises the scale of the highway problem we've inherited and the immense amount of time and money we will be required to solve it. This really is a story of David versus Goliath, and I'm the lad with the slingshot, and I am constructively working with councillors who want to help tackle this problem rather than the whinging from the sidelines. I have also tried to look at amending the motion, and I can say it's almost impossible to amend it because I don't mind scrutiny on the job I'm doing. So I'm afraid I'm going to vote against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I call now on Councillor Rostons, Philip Rostons, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I must admit, I do feel a bit sorry for Councillor Cotty. If anything's a kick in the teeth, I think it's this motion. It was only a few committees ago where everybody was John's best buddy. He was praised for the introduction of the members' request scheme, that's worked incredibly well. And he was actually running around in everybody's patches, including the Ashford Independents, to look at members' concerns. And now, as John said, as we're moving towards an election, it does seem that way, that he's now the bad guy. But John and the team have been making great progress to recover this backlog. And as you can see, that the number of potholes reported, it is concerning, but it just shows the sheer scale of what we're up against here. And John said the MyNots app is out there because we want to try and make it as accessible as possible so that people can report potholes as soon as possible to make them safe, because safety is the paramount here. Yep. And though not pretty, ViaFix, it is a quick and sustainable method to make the roads safe while we wait for full resurfacing. And I'm a Hucknall member, which is also in Ashfield. And I can say that we've all got these roads in our patches that have had years and years of utility works and dug up, and they look like a patchwork quilt. But for the first time in these last few years, I've started to see a huge number of these roads repaired when I've never seen it before. With Farley's Lane in my ward, Woodstock Street, Arden Close, Wigwam Lane, Rockwood Crescent, loads of them. The ones which Councillor Martin said in the backlog, Vine Terrace, Christchurch Road, are going to be done in August. We've got more teams than ever before trying to pull back this backlog. And as we do, we'll eventually start to see that ViaFix is used a lot less. But we have still got a long way to go. I do agree that we still need to put a lot of investment in here, but I feel that John, Via and the team are doing a great job, and I'll continue to feed my problematic roads in on behalf of the constituents. I'm aware that some of the Ashford Independents have not put all of their members' requests in, but I urge them to do so. I know we're out of time now, but let us know what the problematic roads are, and I'm confident that all roads will start seeing fast improvement as we start to move on. But unfortunately, I'm struggling to support this motion, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I'd just like to thank all members for their letters, cards and emails of condolence. It's most heartening. John, well said. That's one of your better speeches, and it came over really well. I won't be supporting this motion today. On numerous occasions, as a member of your committee, we've heard certain members of this council continue to bellyache over what they perceive as a lack of investment in their areas. And they have refused to accept a common sense explanation on why certain funds go into certain areas based on the types and lengths of roads. So large rural areas receive more funding because they've got more roads. This cry wolf mentality, unfortunately, doesn't wear with the committee, yourself or myself. I can assure you, particularly the Ashfield Independents, that Councillor Cotty has been completely fair in the allocation. In fact, too fair in my mind, but completely fair in his allocation of the funds across Nottinghamshire. And for that matter, and it pains me to say, so was Councillor Greaves, his predecessor. The Ashfield, right at the start of John's tenure, we discussed a system of allowing members to be able to break the conditions that are required for getting roads resurfaced and dealt with in their area by bringing in the members' request system, which would allow them to allocate into the £5 million extra funding per year that we are putting into Nottinghamshire roads. And it is that system that has allowed many members to get roads resurfaced in their areas. Certain members find it too difficult to put in these applications, but then stand on the sidelines and complain that they are not getting work done. My suggestion to them is that they fill in the relevant application forms, and they might find they get more roads resurfaced in the areas. Can I just say, to finish, I had the pleasure of driving down a road the other day that the Dragon had been down, the new machine that the Nottinghamshire County Council has bought, and say what an excellent job it has done. And in fact, it's been in Sutton-on-Trent, and my residents are complaining that they didn't see it enough. They want to see it more. And what a fantastic job it's done. And the increased investment in technologies that you have done, and your committee and your staff is beginning to start to make a massive impact across Nottinghamshire. So my main message really in not supporting this motion is well done, John, and long may it continue.
Thank you, Bruce, and nice to see you as well here. Councillor Hollis, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think members of the committee will be aware that I represent the Ashfield Independents on what effectively is the Highways Committee in relation to this item. And I think the facts are that Ashfield does get shortchanged. There's no way means about it. I mean, Councillor Philip Rospens, who we work very closely with the Ashfield district, will be aware that far more roads get resurfaced in Hucknall than they do in Sutton, Kirkby and Selston. He'll also be aware that Trent Bridge got more money last year than the whole of Hucknall. No surprise that asset is driven along by members and can be seen from the county council building. It just feels to me that Ashfield district is a completely forgotten part of our district. And Councillor Cotty, nobody can dispute your work ethic, but I think on this particular issue, it's almost like a Tinkerbell theory where you close your eyes and hope it gets better, because we know the roads are poor. Drive round Sutton and Kirkby. I'll invite you to come round and drive in comfort in the Range Rover and come and have a little look round with me. But the reality is, you say that there's a programme in place. What a programme which I abstained from in the last item, because in last year's programme you failed to deliver 30 of the projects that you put forward. 30 projects in Ashfield. So how do you expect us to have faith in projects coming forward when you failed on ones you voted on last year? And then I think turning to Viafix, and I'm sure other county council members, Conservative, Labour, Liberal, Independent, whoever you are, can all say pick a pothole, pick 10 potholes, of which Viafix has been poured into 10, 20, 30 times at the same hole. We all know it costs hundreds of pounds per Viafix. It's just a complete waste of money. Why don't we just dig it out properly, fill it? If you are going to fill a pothole, fill the pothole. And it almost seems to me, Mr. Chairman, like we're chasing stats. The County Council wants to say, oh, we fixed thousands of potholes. I'd rather you fix half as many. You'll not get any complaints from the Ashfield Independents for fixing half as many, but fix them properly so you don't keep going back to the same potholes. So the stats, it's not 100 potholes fixed 10 times to make 1,000 fixes. We've actually fixed them, Mr. Chairman. So, of course, I'll be supporting Councillor Martin and Councillor Smith's motion. And I think at the very least, it's highlighted the discussion about highways, which all of our postbags gets filled with. I appreciate that it's election time, so Councillor Cotty is going to be a little bit more defensive, but I hope he and the rest of the Conservative and Mansfield Independent members can see that genuinely this motion's come from a good place. We just want to see our roads in Ashfields fixed. We want to see roads across Nottinghamshire maintained properly, and frankly, less money spent on glory projects like Trent Bridge, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. Councillor Owen.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have to say, I'm delighted that Councillor Cotty's getting it in the neck this afternoon. It's giving me a rest for a change. So long may it continue. But I really do get fed up of listening to the peevish whining of the Ashfield Independents. Always hard done to. Always Ashfield is overlooked, when nothing could be further from the truth, as you have quite clearly demonstrated. Of course, there is still more work to be done, but I think we have an incredibly good record on what we've managed to achieve and what you've managed to achieve, Councillor Cotty, over these past 3 years. I remember, I think it was about 5 years ago, when we had, maybe even 6 years ago, time goes so quickly when you're having fun, the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, came to Kimberley and he walked down a road in Kimberley called Victoria Street. And it was dubbed the worst, the street in Nottinghamshire that was in the worst condition, or certainly it was a street in Kimberley that was in the worst condition. It took, Chairman, the Conservatives to take control with the Mansfield Independent Forum, control of Nottinghamshire County Council, and I might say me to be elected as the County Councillor for Kimberley to get that road repaired. Donkey's years it had been in a poor state of repair, but now it is a brand spanking new road and everybody has been delighted about it. Councillor Hollis tells us to fix half as many potholes as we have been doing. Well, I hope, Councillor Cotty, you will ignore that advice and carry on filling as many as you can, because it's absolute nonsense to say that you should fix half the number of potholes. There's been a lot of work going on, certainly in my division. It's years since we've had the amount of work. In fact, I don't recall the amount, ever having done the amount of work that has been done in these past 2 to 3 years. Do you remember what it was like under 28 years of Labour? What was their factor? They introduced a disadvantage factor, which meant that it wasn't a case of if your road was in a very poor state of repair, it was if the road ran through a community that they deemed to be disadvantaged. Well, what a way to run a system. Was it any wonder that many of our areas saw little or no investment over a long period of time? We have a record that is outstanding. Yes, there is a lot more to be done, and I shall continue to fill in my lists, unlike the Ashfield Independents, some of whom can't even be bothered to fill out their lists. And if roads in Selston need repairs, then Councillor Martin should add that to his list and put up a good case as to why it should be done. clearly he's not pulling his weight as the local county councillor if he can't get a #1 priority road resurfaced or repaired to a satisfactory standard. Because certainly most of the people that I talk to in the council are able to get that done. So he really needs to be looking at his own performance as a county councillor and not the performance of the chairman of the committee and his committee. Keep on the good work. And can I remind you, Councillor Cotty, I've submitted my list for this year, and I've also submitted a petition today. So I expect my praise to you will reap its just rewards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Doddy, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't know a huge amount about tarmac, but as fate would have it, I was driving down my driveway yesterday morning, and when I got to the bottom of it, there was the VIA workers were there. And I thought, this is too good an opportunity. I'm going to stop the car and get out and have a chat with them. And they were just putting ViaFix into a number of potholes. And I said, look, if I'm a member of the public and I walk along here and see you dump this in the pothole and then run over it with your car and then disappear, I'm going to think, this is pretty quick, this is pretty inefficient, this is pretty ineffective. And he spent the next 15 minutes, the worker did, explaining to me about the chemicals that were in the tarmac that made ViaFix unique. He explains to me that if you cut out all the potholes and you fill them in with tarmac and then you whack them, you actually cause collateral damage to the surrounding integrity. And if you go back in 6 or 12 months, you'll notice lots of cracks in the area around where you fixed. So the area you fixed might be intact, but he said that the actual damage done to the surrounding areas was the most noticeable thing. He said he has worked doing this for many, many years. This is his bread and butter. And he said that it's the best compound he's ever worked with. He said the speed he can work at, the number of potholes he can fill in, the number of bags he has to carry is significantly reduced. The return to get more ingredient has been reduced. And I often think if you want to know whether something works or not, it's often a case of asking the man that has to do the job. So when I asked him, I said, you do the job, what's your opinion? He said, the best thing I've ever worked with, ViaFix works, and it was his opinion that it was a very good product. It got holes filled quickly, and he was very, very happy with it. And I think that's straight from the horse's mouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I could listen to you talk all day. Yes, with that lovely accent. Can I move on, Councillor Carr, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, we're talking about potholes here. Can we take the party politics out of this? You know, I get on very, very well with the team at VIA. They are very responsive. They usually are able to do what I request. If I go online and pinpoint a pothole, it's usually filled in non-COVID times, usually filled in within 48 hours. And that's what we want at the moment. The problem with the roads anywhere in the country is it's a bit like painting the 4th road bridge or railway bridge, whichever one you want to paint. And the problem is sometime in the past, the actual cycle of painting them didn't happen, and we're still reeling from that now. So I'm quite happy that if a huge pothole appears, and they can appear overnight, especially if you've had heavy rain like we've had recently in June, that somebody is there.
Okay, thank you for your help. Bye. Bye.
Well, somebody is there very quickly to be able to fill them in. So I would say that keep filling in your forms, because I have a good track record of things that I put on my requests getting done. It is a system that works. If you work with VIA and highways, then you know that actually boosts your chances of getting your area done. And it's not a political decision at all, as the Ashfield Independents are trying to intimate here, because I would say that the roads in my division are probably better than they are next door in Stapleford, which has got 2 Conservative county councillors. So I think we are dealt with by the departments and by Councillor Cotty's department on a very fair basis. And really, let's get it into our heads that the reason why Mansfield and Ashfield don't get as much money, and Broxtowe for that matter, doesn't get as much money is because we haven't got as many roads, because we're a very urbanised area. And that's why more money is spent in Rushcliffe and Newark and Bassetlaw than it is in Ashfield, Broxtowe and Mansfield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Dobson, please.
Can you hear me?
I can now, yes,
Oh,
and I can see you.
Jolly good. You can't see me?
I can see you, yes.
Oh, right, fine. Thank you, Chairman. Well, here we go again. Yes, you're absolutely right. It might be, it might not be an election next year very soon. I've just about had enough, and like 1 or 2 other speakers, I get fed up of David Martin, and I'm awfully sorry, David, you're a nice chap, but you constantly bellyache about Viafix. I don't know whether you're an expert in this material. I'm not, but I don't have a problem with it. Like everybody else, like John Cotty said, it's the start of something, and most importantly, it's for the safety. Yes, there are certain depths that the road has to get to before you can have a full pothole repair. So I'd sooner have Viafix stuck in the smaller ones to keep it safe than none at all. But I am getting very, very fed up of you constantly bellyaching. And you do it in Gordon Wheeler's Renew Committee, you do it in Communities in Place, and you just don't listen. As John said, you know, he's been over to your place. I bet he's been to your area, Ashfield, more than he's been to anybody else's. And, you know, he knows exactly what your problems are. But you want to come and be, not necessarily in mine, but you're very welcome to come, but come into a division that's like Bruce's, like Roger Jackson's, like all of us that represent rural areas. We've got far many more roads than you've got. I mean, you know, it really is silly to keep going on. And if you're not filling these forms in, then you're silly to not to do so. You must. I have an excellent service from John Cotty's department. I have an excellent service from Doug Coote's department, VIA. And I think everybody, and I also happen, like John Doddy said, I speak to the boys that have been doing it for years, roadworks for years, and some of them know so much about the job, and yet nobody else seems to speak to them. And I also say thank you, and it goes a long way. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Maureen. Councillor Handley, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I feel I have to speak on this. This is at least the 3rd or 4th time I've heard Tom question Trent Bridge. It's at least the 3rd time we've been complaining about the unequal spread of finances across the county. And I've got to say, the explanations have been given on every occasion that, you know, there are guidances from the government about the spread of funding across the county, and also the Trent Bridge situation. We have no choice in that. It's not the fact that we want to make Trent Bridge look spectacular because it's near County Hall. It's absolutely not. We have a responsibility. Obviously, we all recognise that potholes are a big issue. It's the thing that fills our inboxes more than anything else. And I think part of the numbers we talk about is the fact that it's so much easier now to report potholes, and the Mind Not Tap has made it even easier. I think John Cotty spends more time than anybody I know going up and down the county, listening to people and trying to help and support
their issues, and I think we should compliment him on the time he puts in. And there's been a number of occasions where we've talked about the Ashfield Independents not filling in their forms about issues in their division. I think that may be because they're spending so much time filling in forms about the issues in my division, and that may well be because there's an election coming up and they have aspirations which we will see as things develop. But I've got to say that I can't support this motion because it is so critical in a very unfair way. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Rhodes, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this motion, but I have to say, Philip, that you have a habit of turning support into opposition by making gratuitous claims unnecessarily about the previous Labour administration, and in doing that, I'm afraid you rather turn the tables slightly. So on this motion, look, I've not got a lot of time for this idea of the Highways Capital Revenue Programme should be carved up like some sort of sponge cake or something, and we're all given an equal sized portion. It's nonsense. But I don't think we'd be too complacent about highways. It's nice to pat ourselves on the back, and you're doing quite a bit of that, and good luck to you. But the fact is that the public perception of the quality of our highway repairs is not particularly good. We don't have a great reputation, and we should be asking ourselves why that is. We should be asking ourselves whether the quality of the work is as good as it could be. We could be asking ourselves whether Viafix is the answer to the pothole problem. I remember Viafix being demonstrated to us, as Kevin Greaves and others will, when it first came out. It was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. I was watching some guys the other day chucking it into potholes, slapping it with the back of the shovel and backing the lorry over it. I'm not convinced that it was the best job in the world, and certainly I'm not convinced that it was a long-term or even a medium-term solution to the potholes. And this is the other problem, that they're left with Viafix in them for too long. And what happens then, of course, is it degrades and they finish up as potholes again. And then people come round and they're complaining about the fact that it was what they regard, unfairly, I accept, as a bodge job. So we need to get our heads around this. It's all right pointing the finger at other people, and some people are good at doing that, absolving themselves of responsibility despite the fact that they've been in a position of authority for 3 years, and blaming the people that went before them. You've had a lot of money from this government for highways, a lot of money that we never had. And frankly, I don't think that in every instance it's been well utilised. I've no problem with my relationship with Via. We have a very good highways manager. She works along with a very good team. I have a good working relationship with John Cotty, and he's been very helpful with a particularly pressing problem in my area. But don't let's go away saying everything's rosy in the garden when it's not. So some of what's contained in this motion is important. It's easy to dismiss it, but some of it is important. And I think as an authority, we need to be looking at that. And so, rather than just dismissing it. And so I'm minded to support the motion, not because I particularly agree with all of what's in it, but I do believe that we can't afford to keep telling ourselves that we're doing a brilliant job when the public are telling us otherwise. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm still trying to work out actually how long Councillor Doddy's drive is, how long it took him to get down to the bottom. I did actually raise my hand prior to Councillor Carr speaking, and I find myself in the very difficult position of actually agreeing with a lot he said, a lot of what he said, because Councillor Martin talked about the difference in roads between Ashfield and Rushcliffe. Well, as some of the speakers have said, each district does not have exactly the same percentage or mileage of roads. each district has a different length of road, and therefore the money spent reflects that, because some districts have a lot more roads than others. And in terms of Trent Bridge, Councillor Hollis talked about the money being spent on Trent Bridge. That cost is being shared with the City Council, and also they are necessary repairs. And if you put that in the context of Clifton Bridge being partially closed at the moment, then if both those bridges had been closed, then basically Nottingham would pretty much have been closed for business. And I'm sure, despite the fact that neither Clifton Bridge nor Trent Bridge are in Ashfield, I'm sure even Councillor Hollis would have thought, well, maybe there's a problem if both those bridges are closed. So Trent Bridge is absolutely necessary repairs to keep the traffic moving. And I really just want to finish by saying that Councillor Cotty is rushed off his feet doing a lot of very good hard work, and VIA do a tremendous amount of work. And as Councillor Dobson said, the VIA fix is for the safety of us and all the road users. So I cannot support this motion because it's too critical, and I commend Councillor Cotty to keep doing the good work he's doing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I call on Councillor Greaves, Councillor Hollis, you are raising an issue?
Yeah, a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. I'm not suggesting in relation to Councillor Neil Clark's comments and Councillor John Cotty's comments regarding Trent Bridge. I'm suggesting they didn't need to put gold paint on it and make it look like a fancy art project. I appreciate it needed to be painted, but we didn't need to spend the hundreds of thousands of pounds that we did doing so. Make it safe so the road, it doesn't rot and come down, not make it look like a work of art when roads in Ashfield are crumbling. And to compare it to Clifton Bridge.
Thank you. It's now becoming a statement.
Is completely incorrect, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor, you're now making a statement. So thank you.
Finished.
Councillor Greaves, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Hope you can hear me well.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear John saying about the years of neglect and over our roads. Well, I'm in total agreement with them there. It's about 10 years, actually, John, 10 years of your government that's neglected our infrastructure of this country. And regarding Bruce, it doesn't seem to know the difference between surface dressing and resurfacing. Surface dressing, it's painted over the cracks. Resurfacing is a full resurfacing, like you know, John, planing up the road and resurfacing it, and that'll give you a good 10 years of service. So obviously you don't know that. And also with the new pothole machine that we've got, I hope Bruce has gone along telling his residents that it'll be back soon because it's got a 79% failure rate. Hope he's going to tell his residents that. But you know, you've had a lot of money, John, and ViaFix, even though it's not a miracle cure, it's a temporary filling. But the fillings are becoming permanent. That's the thing. And then you're going over to fill them again. And then you're going over to fill them again. That's the problem with it. It's not. It isn't. It's just meant to be a temporary filling, not a permanent fill. You know, we used to criticise utility companies for the work that they done on the roads, and but to be quite honest, nowadays they're not making a bad job, and some may say they're making a better job than us. So while we are inspecting utilities work, why not have somebody from VIA inspecting our work? Actually, the surface dressing, like I've said before, it's just painting over the cracks. It's a cheap way of doing it. It's a cheap way of making a road look like it's been resurfaced when it hasn't been resurfaced. And we find it time and time again. And even now, even after a year that some of these roads have been surface stressed, we're going out to fix problems with them. So it may be that we need to be looking at quality of work, taking a back step and looking at quality of what we did in the past. In the past, we used a roller to use over fillings of potholes, and that was better than stamping on it, hitting it with a spade, or running over the back of it with a lorry. There's got to be better ways than what we're doing of repairing these potholes. And so there, Chair, one or two suggestions there that we should be looking at the quality of work that we're doing. And I'm sure residents would see a difference if they saw somebody repairing a pothole properly with a stamper or a roller, rather than just stamping on it with a boot, hitting it with a shovel, or rolling over it with a lorry. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Before I call on Councillor Bosnak, Councillor Lawton, you've again put your hand up for an issue.
Point of clarification, if I may, Mr. Chairman, just a very quick point of clarification on what Kevin Greaves has just said. He is absolutely well aware that surface dressing is used to be able to seal the surface of the highway, and it lasts for approximately 8 to 10 years. We were forced down this route because of the diabolical state of our roads that were left by the Labour Party.
Yeah, without going into a statement, please.
Take some responsibility.
Can we go without
pathetic?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's go without the political part of it. Take your point in respect to the length of time you believe that this surface is fine. Councillor Bosniak, please.
Again, I've lost the camera, so you'll just have to listen to me.
I can hear you, but we can't see you.
That's fine. I'm starting to get really fed up now with the mudslinging that's going on, to be honest. And I just want to talk about the current situation. I don't want to talk about what happened in the past. I don't agree with anything that Bruce has just said, and I'm not even going to respond to it, really. It's not even worth a response. So I'm speaking from experience, and the experience I have is that I get that when, oh, I'm sorry, I'm being attacked by my cat. And the experience I have is people contacting me about either surface dressing or potholes that have been worked on, and then they've had to call back because of the mess that it's made and the fact that in potholes it's lifting straight back out again. I don't understand why that is happening. I think this really is a quality issue. I don't blame the workmen on this, but if the equipment and the materials that we have are substandard, then we need to know that. So it's not just a quality. It's the fact that, in my opinion, it's a complete waste of money. And surely it doesn't make financial sense for me to be on the phone to some excellent officers that we have in Via, asking them to come back out yet again to put things right. It doesn't look good to the public, and they think we're just wasting money. And that's the biggest complaint I get, is you're wasting money, you've got to come back. If you did it right in the first place, this wouldn't happen. So it's just my own grumble from my own experience that clearly what we're using is not really doing the job.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Smith, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to start by saying, Councillor Owen, I am so sorry that we annoy you constantly by caring about our residents and the areas that we represent, and for constantly speaking up on their behalf. I do apologise for that. I am really sorry about that. John, this is no way, as Councillor Austin has described it, designed to kick you. I've got a lot of respect for you. We've worked together before. This isn't aimed at you. This is aimed at the policy behind distribution of the highways funding. But as Councillor Martin stated previously, the biggest complaint that we get from residents is the state of roads and pavements within the area. The residents I represent in Sutton North are justifiably angry at the deterioration of roads and pavements. Where I live in Stanton Hill, for example, the roads are in a terrible state. Some resemble patchwork quilts, botch job after botch job.
ViaFix just isn't fit for purpose. It is a short-sighted way of fixing the problem. Mr. Chairman, I know that this is a short-term fix, but the reality is that the majority of the roads where ViaFix is used are some of the worst roads within the county. But after a very short time, the compound that's used, it just comes straight back out again and it doesn't do the job. And it's almost as bad as it was before. So our crews, the hard-working guys that we've got out on there every day, are having to go back to the same area again and again. And I'm sure it's just as frustrating for the staff as it is for us as members. As this motion says, long-term, more sustainable solutions need to be found, including early detection, intervention, and better, more sustainable repair materials and technologies. And I understand that we've got the new Dragon, so that is an added benefit. I will give you that one. But we do need to do more. We can't just stop there. We must find a way of being proactive in repairing our roads and pavements rather than waiting till complaints come in, rather than waiting till people get in touch and say, my wheels just popped because I've gone over a pothole. It's just not good enough. The Ashfield Independents, we work really hard to identify where potholes are, and some of those potholes are a disgrace. As this motion says, this council received 100,000 more complaints than any other county in the country. Let me make it clear, that's receiving complaints, not fixing them. The Ashfield Independents want to introduce fairness into the system. It's only right and proper, and that's why I ask you today to support this motion. It's not political to ask for our fair share of funding. It's not political to ask for a better quality service. And it's certainly not political to scrutinise this council and request that it gets a better handle on its pothole prices. Now, saying that, Mr. Chairman, I have got a question more than anything. Mr. Chairman, residents blame us for the county council failures to fix the roads and the potholes. Indeed, our very own Conservative MP, Lee Anderson, who I am sure you're all proud of, blames us for the state of the roads. Now, Councillor Cotty and many other members have reminded us today of the formula used for allocating funding for highway maintenance. However, Lee Anderson MP has told residents that by voting Conservative, we will get more money spent on Ashfield roads. I would love to know, Mr. Chairman, who is telling the truth here. Is it Councillor Cotty and the Conservative councillors in this chamber, or is it Lee Anderson MP? Is the formula based on the length of roads, or is it based on the number of Conservative votes? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, obviously, although you would like an answer, that's not going to come from this venue. Councillor Longden, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've been listening to what's being said. It's like again a bit repetitive, so I'll have to do a bit of my repetitiveness, if I may.
I'd more appreciate if it was shorter. But,
well said. No, I'll get on well with Vi. I have a number of projects in the parkland that's been dealt with. I used to have one-to-ones with our highways officer, but unfortunately with this Corvo, we can't have it. I did everything from screen down for horses to walk more safely, get very servicing done. I got extremely well with them. Although most of my complaints are, as Ellen Smith was saying, we'll get this, it's all about roads and curves. But I also object to people bringing in the politics into it. The council car said no politics, and then immediately brought politics into it by criticising Dr. John and my division, which I thought was shocking. But we do extremely well with Vi. We had an awful lot done. So I have to say, Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Logden. Councillor Peck, please.
Can I just clarify that I was using it as an illustration of how transport, the Highways Department isn't political. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr. Again, can I go back? Councillor Peck, please. And I have one speaker after that, and then I will ask Councillor Martin to sum up, please.
Yes,
Councillor Peck.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chairman. And first of all, I'd like to say, like I'm sure most councillors, I have the utmost respect for the officers of VIA, and I do get an excellent service and excellent support from them. They're always ready to go as far as possible to give me the sort of advice that I need. Now, I do have some reservations about this motion. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I can't, such as others have mentioned, I can't really support the notion that expenditure can be divvied up, as Councillor Rhodes said, like a sponge cake in some sort of artificial equal distribution. I can't support that. And also, I'm not sure about the points regarding Viafix, and this does seem to turn into a bit of another go at the distribution rather than concentrating on some of the other important points that have been raised. I think much of the issue, I do have some sympathy with Councillor Cotty, because he faces the same situation as his counterparts in every local authority across the country. And as Councillor Grieve says, there's been a significant investment over the last 10 years. I mean, that's admitted by the present Conservatives now that they've apparently ditched austerity, but that's what we've had for the last 10 years. And the highways budget has suffered as much as any other in local government. And that means that to many residents, it's the most visible area of austerity, because they see the results of that every time they walk out their front door or drive along the road or walk along the pavement. And the roads across the country are in a dreadful state, some of the worst in Europe, I have to say. They really are bad, and maybe Nottinghamshire is worse than other areas within this country. I don't know, but certainly the state of the potholes has been said. It's not good. I don't think it's good enough to blame a previous Labour administration. You've been in long enough yourself, but I think the root cause really is at the government's door. Regarding some of the issues concerning highways, surface dressing has been mentioned, and I think this is what it comes down to: is the quality of the work. There was a whole estate done in my village a couple of years ago with the surface dressing, and a certain amount of patching was done before the surface dressing was put over, but none of the gullies were filled in. So what happened is that 3 or 4 weeks later, there were a glorious display of wildflowers growing out of the gullies straight after the surface dressing had taken place, only weeks afterwards. I brought the area manager down to have a look at the quality of the work, because all the residents were complaining, and I showed her down some of the roads where buddleia was already growing out of the gullies. A buddleia, a shrub, and lots of them growing out of the gullies, because simply they hadn't been filled in before the surface dressing was done. If you're going to do surface dressing, you've still got to deal with what's underneath, and many of the gullies are broken up, and that's why we have our weeds problem, which is a circular problem. The more weeds we get, the more the gullies get broken up, and so on. So the quality of their work, I think, is a concern. I also worry about the pavements. We've spent a lot of time talking about potholes in the roads. We don't hear very much about pavements. I think only one person's mentioned them. And the state of the pavements in some ways are quite often worse than the state of the roads. And it does bother me that when a road is being surfaced, very rarely is the pavement done at the same time. And that seems strange. I can give an example of that. At the moment, it's down as my member's request. So I'm delighted about it, John. A road that I've been asking to be resurfaced for a long time, for several years. It's been one of my members' requests. The B6030, the main road through Clipston, for those of you that know it, it's going to be resurfaced in a week or two's time. Unfortunately, the pavements aren't going to be done at the same time. And I don't want to gripe too much, because I'm delighted that this road is going to be done at long last, despite the fact that the local Tory district councillor has claimed credit for it, even though it's had nothing to do with it. It does say members' request on the committee paper, i.e. me. But the pavement isn't being done. The pavement is in a dreadful state, equally as bad, if not worse, than the road. It seems a false, I know it costs more, but it seems a false economy not to do the pavements at the same time and have to go back to it at some point in the future. So it's things like that that
Councillor Peck, you're coming to the end of your time.
So I do hope you'll address some of those points. Thank you.
Thank you. So I've got two more, including Councillor Garner. Councillor Garner, can I call you now? And can you bring anything new to the debate? Otherwise, if it's just repetitive, can we sort of go for a more shortened version?
Yes, Chairman. As I understand it, roads have a 50-year life. That means 2% of our network will come under the constraints of repair each year. And if there's been a slippage, so I don't criticise any party or group or anything, there's been a slippage of works over the years by everybody, then it's going to take time to bring it back up to scratch, as we would say. I'd like to say VFix, that is, yes, it's a major topic. I had an incident last year, Friday afternoon, a big pothole came on Nottingham Road. And as I drove up, the car in front of me swerved. I thought, what was that swerving for? And then I seen the pothole. So I got in touch with the officers straight away. And that afternoon, and it was Friday afternoon at 1:30, they come out and did it, which is fantastic. Because if a cyclist had hit that hole, there's no doubt they'd probably be in an hospital bed. So VFix does have its things it can do for you. I really would have loved a proper job. Well, you know, you've got to get the safety of the people. And that was an incident in my patch about 6 months ago. So, yeah, you know, you've got to spend more money. Where does the money come from? We all know that. And as I say, the lifespan of roads is 50 years. It's like maintaining your house. If you're a landlord, you have to keep them up to scratch. I'll say no more.
Thank you very much, Councillor Garner. So the two left. I'm taking no more councillors after that. And Councillor Saddington, please. And again, can you be as direct and as short as possible?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think we have to remember that we have a huge number of miles of road in this county, and that potholes can appear overnight, particularly when we've had heavy rain or even snow, or when the gritters have been out. I've always been advised by Councillor Cotty himself that if somebody reports a pothole to the golden number or to their councillor or to whomever, that there is only a certain percentage of time before that pothole must be filled. Because should there be an accident and the pothole has been left once reported, then the Notts County Council become liable. Now, I may be wrong, but that is what Councillor Cotty has always informed me of. So clearly, the amount of potholes that are reported, there is no way this time to resurface the road. They have to fill them quickly as a point of urgency. Councillor Doddy himself has said that the men who were working for VIA when he came out of his drive have said it's the best they've had. And quite frankly, until there's something better, I think it's something we all have to accept. Yes, it may come out, but so may something else. You can often have a road resurfaced and Severn Trent turn up to do some work and make a mess of it. So I think we have to accept that we've got a substance, the VFix. It does do the job. Above anything else, it probably prevents accidents. And I think we have to go with it. And thank you, John, for all the hard work you do.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, I have Richard Jackson. Councillor Jackson, you know about frugality of words.
I'll be as brief as I can, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Start, though? I want to just say I get excellent service from my local highways people. Not just because I chair the Finance Committee. I have when I've been in opposition and when we've been in control. You know, they can't always do everything that you ask, but they're very, very good, and they come out and do what's needed when it's needed. I'm not going to support this motion. It's pure political posturing, and it's the run-up to an election. We know it is. We know what it's all about. I just hope that there's some honesty when the Ashford Independent colleagues write their leaflets and put them out there. I hope that they'll tell the residents that they repeatedly voted against our extra £20 million for potholes. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Never put alternatives together. Didn't tell us where they get extra money from or how they'd fund additional pothole repairs. £20 million is about 300,000 potholes in total, Chairman. So I'll leave you with those figures, and I certainly won't be supporting this nonsense motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Sorry. Where am I? Thank you, Councillor Martin. Would you like to sum up, and we will go then to the vote, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes. Okay. Well, where do I start? Like I said right at the very beginning, it feels like deja vu. I'm back in 2017. And during that December debate there, I gave you all the facts and figures about geographical areas versus economics of the demographic balance of the county council. But obviously that was all lost on you because it was just before Christmas. Anyway, you know, this is not a reflection on the way that the county council has managed it or John Cotty's input. He's got a great work ethic, I know that. And I'm not reflecting on the Communities and Place Development and Review Committee either, because it's a great committee. But what I am saying is the public perception of VFIX is just horrendous. And, you know, after that committee in December 17, when we came to the budget in February, February 18, we had a new terminology and a new phrase, and I was pleased by the outcome, because at that budget meeting we had another statement that came, the right roads at the right time, and that's simply not been borne out for me, right? So, you know, so going on to Councillor Austin's and the 350k on Trent Bridge, you know, the reason we're highlighting that is because that's more than the county has spent this year in Hucknall alone. You know, Councillor Lawton, our roads are used 3 times as much because the density of population in our area is much greater than it is in the other areas, so our roads get worn out a lot faster, right? And just to let you know, I put my schemes in, my divisional schemes in every single year, and out of the 3 years that I put my divisional requests in, they've only been honoured once. So there's little reason we have not a lot of faith in that system. You know, I actually was the councillor that took John Cotty to look at technology in improvements in the first place. It was my impetus that started that progressional route for the Dragon, right? But I've never seen it in Ashfield, right? Councillor Owen, I'm not whining at all. I'm not calling the record, but these potholes are being filled multiple times. Last December, at a full council, we had 250,000 potholes filled up to last December. And I asked the question about how many times they've been refilled, and I've never received an answer. That's because the answer is probably about 40% of them have been refilled multiple times. And that's why I disagree with VFIX, because it's not a permanent solution. It's a quick fix. It's a quick fix, right? And we know that from all the paperwork and all the explanations. So, and of course work's being done in your area, Councillor Owen. Of course it is. You know, and like again, I'll reiterate to you, I've always filled my lists in every year. Councillor Doddy, VFIX, my area is filled with road workers, right? So I've got a large amount of road workers in my area. 2 national companies work in my area, and they absolutely detest VFIX and the way it's done. I understand all the reasons why the county council uses VFIX for the health and safety reasons and everything else, but all of the co-workers who live in my area are constantly berating me about us using VFIX and the condition and the way, the format and the way the public perception of what VFIX does. So moving on to Councillor Carr, our area is much more densely populated, just like yours is, but you don't have major junctions like the M1, the A38, the A60 and the A611. Every single day there are hundreds of traffic jams across the A611 and the A608. When the motorway breaks, my road outside my house is like a car park, and that's what I'm saying. We're a major thoroughfare. We're geographically positioned as a major thoroughfare between Derbyshire and East Nottinghamshire. So, Councillor Dobson, it's got nothing to do with elections. They're next year. VFX is not a product that should be relied on. It's a false economy, right? But you know, you call me for whinging, but at least I'm doing something about it, and I won't be just abstaining. So Councillor Cotty came to my division once in 3 years. He went to Ashfields, he went to Central, Skegby and Larwood, and I know he visits Selston on a regular basis, so he must know that my Mansfield Road in Selston and my Nottingham Road in Selston are like third world country roads. So Councillor Handy, I've been in your division. Yes, I have been in your division because I live right on the edge of it. And I can tell you now, Moor Green is absolutely despicable. The roads in Moor Green are absolutely the worst I've ever seen. Smithhurst Road in Greasley is just as bad. And there are numerous other roads around that area because I live in this area and I travel to that area because that's where IKEA is in the Golden Belt area. So we're always going up and down that way. And it's not for just delivering leaflets. So, Councillor Rhodes, your public perception, of course, like you quite rightly said, is of paramount importance. And this is not a blame game. This is not a blame game because we've only got limited amount of funds. And this is why I took John Cotty to look at technology in the first place, because we haven't got any more money. So we need to improve the technology. And I would love to see the Dragon in Ashfield, but I've never have. So, Councillor Grieve, lots of funding has come from the government as well, you know, for VFX. And again, I'll say it's not a permanent fix. We seem to be relying on it as a permanent fix. And utilities are checked. I do know that because we had a talk about that at Communities and Development Review. Redressing is another quick fix, you know, and these are all things that are slowing the process of the repair system down because we simply haven't got enough money. So I keep reiterating the fact that the technology is the only way we're going to make more sense of the money that we've actually got to spend on the roads, and VFX is not a permanent fix. So all the councillors that advocate using VFX, yes, of course I advocate using it, but only as a temporary measure, not to be used once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in the same hole. That is bad policy and poor economics. So, you know, I'm asking for a review of how many times, because we must be able to pinpoint through our network system of VIA, because it's fantastic, it is. And when we log on to the the pothole system, and each time we get a HAMS reference number, we must have the statistics of how many times those potholes have been refilled. And that is my problem. Again, Councillor Bosniak, public perception, the condition of the repairs against the expenditure. That's my argument for it. You know, and Councillor Longdon, I get on with my VIA officers fantastically. I always have done. I got on with Dave Walker and I get on with Johnny Davis. Absolutely brilliant. They do everything I ask for them and more. You know, even in Broxtowe, you know, even in Mansfield, if I ask them to do something, they'll do it. So I haven't got a problem with my relationship with VIA at all. You know, Councillor Peck, again, respect with VIA, you know, and I'm not criticising Councillor Cotty at all. And austerity has had a great impact on the way that the County Council has resolved the roads issue over the last 10 years. And now we've got COVID causing the same problem, with almost a £500,000 backlog from last year. You know, if we can't fix the highways network in a non-COVID period, how are we going to go on in one? That's another question I've got. So where am I?
Councillor, do you think you can come to a conclusion on this one? It's several terms have been used a number of times by both yourself and other councillors.
Yeah,
so
all right. And I'll sum up by saying, you know, at the end of the day, this motion is entirely not about the performance of one party or another. It's not about the performance of one councillor or one department or another. It's about the methodology, what we use, and the equality of the financial redistribution. You may have larger areas like Rushcliffe is 17%, Nottinghamshire was 21% geographically, and Bassetlaw is 21%. Ashfield's only 10%. The reason for that is because it has three times as many people packed in that area. So our roads are used 3 times as much as yours. And that is the reality. And I think that is why you should support this motion, because it's a fair and balanced motion covering the broad spectrum of all the issues contained within the system that we use to repair our roads. And it's the single biggest complaint that we get from any resident whatsoever. And I haven't even mentioned pavements because they're not even thought about. So I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go through to the vote, and again, it'll be a recorded vote. Anthony, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to start with Councillor Adair.
Against.
Councillor Allen.
For.
Councillor Barnfather.
Against.
Councillor Bosniak.
For.
Councillor Bradley.
Against.
Councillor Brooks.
For.
Councillor Brown.
Against.
Councillor Butler.
Against.
Councillor Carr.
Abstain.
Councillor John Clark.
For.
Councillor Neil Clark.
Against.
Councillor Cotty.
Against.
Councillor Creamer.
For.
Councillor Cutts.
Against.
Councillor Deakin.
For.
Councillor Dobson. Councillor Dobson.
She's waving at us.
You're muted.
No, I try. It keeps flipping back. Against, Chairman. Mr. Chief Executive.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Councillor Doddy.
Against.
Councillor Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Fielding.
For.
Councillor Fole.
For.
Councillor Garner.
Against.
Councillor Guilfoyle.
For.
Councillor Girling.
Against.
Councillor Greaves.
For.
Councillor Handley.
Against.
Councillor Harper.
Against.
Councillor Henry.
For.
Councillor Henshaw.
For.
Councillor Hollis.
For.
Councillor Hopewell.
Against.
Councillor Richard Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Roger Jackson.
Against.
Councillor Kerry.
Against.
Councillor Knight.
Against.
Councillor Lawton.
Apologise. Against.
Thank you, Bruce. Councillor Longdon.
Against.
Councillor Madden. Councillor Martin.
For.
Councillor Meal.
For.
Councillor Ogle.
Against.
Councillor Owen.
Against.
Councillor Payne.
For.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Peck.
For.
Councillor Place. Councillor Plant. Councillor Pringle.
For.
Councillor Purdue Horan.
Against.
Councillor Quigley.
Against.
Councillor Rhodes.
For.
Councillor Kevin Rostance.
Against.
Councillor Phil Rostance.
Against.
Councillor Saddington.
Against.
Councillor Sissons.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
Against.
Councillor Simbaridis.
For.
Councillor Vickers.
Against.
Councillor Walker.
Against.
Councillor Wallace.
Against.
Councillor Rice.
For.
Councillor Wetton.
For.
Councillor Gordon Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler.
Against.
Councillor Woodhead.
For.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
Councillor Zadrosny.
For.
Thank you. We'll just count those up and we'll come back to you.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. The result is on the vote, in that 4, 28, abstentions 1, against 37. The motion therefore falls. That concludes the business for today. Can I thank you all for both your patience and your involvement in the meeting. A lot of good positive things are coming out, as we see from the COVID research, with the death rates and infection rates dropping down. But please try and be safe during the summer, what's left of the summer holidays, and look forward to seeing you in September, if not before. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Bye-bye.